Okay, Pepper, we should be live.
Welcome members to this meeting of Full Council and to those watching on the YouTube live stream. I would like to begin this meeting with a minute of silence in honor of the late Councillor Louis Cole, who will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Can
I just make a quick comment, if that's okay, before the meeting gets underway?
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to say, before the meeting gets fully underway, I just wondered if you would be willing to have this council note the efforts of a handful of councillors who are also key workers during the day, because these individuals, they are not all, I will stress, in the Labour group, but have over the last few months been working on the front line, helping ensure that people in the city get the services and support they need, while also dealing with an increased workload. Equally important, we should also, as a council, in my opinion, note all the other key workers in the city who have, put simply, protected and ensured that this city's economy did not drop to its knees. And I believe that at the very least, the local authority need not clap or produce a poster, but should simply say thank you for the efforts of key workers in Peterborough and have it noted in the minutes. That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you. I would like to introduce members to Canon Ian Black, who will be saying prayer this evening.
Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public who are watching this. We meet at extraordinary times and they continue. So a prayer of hope in this time of pandemic. God of hope and consolation, in times of anxiety, may we be drawn by your hope, not driven by fear. In sickness and health, may we find your song of praise to lift our heads in thanksgiving and joy. When times are hard, inspire us with your generous love to be mindful of the needs of all people. In isolation and physical distance, help us to reach out to others with words of encouragement and companionship. Bless all whose work ensures our common well-being, that together we may travel through this veil of misery to a bright dawn of your new tomorrow, which is always much greater than the past. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
And a prayer for our city. God of life and love, we pray for our city. Grant us peace in our communities, honesty in our trading, hospitality and warmth in our welcome, integrity in our planning and civic life, that the common good may prevail and your kingdom of righteousness and justice be affirmed. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. In order for this virtual meeting to run smoothly, please keep your camera switched on at all time and keep your microphone muted except when you are invited to speak by myself or the monitoring officer. Any member wishing to speak during debate should indicate this by clicking the blue raise hand function in the participate screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, make your comment, and then mute yourself again. If we run out into technical problems, the meeting may be adjourned. While this is addressed, if your connection failed during the meeting and you are unable to reconnect, one of the Democratic Service team will contact you. I would remind members that all virtual meetings are recorded. Finally, as we are meeting virtually, it is important that members adhere to the rules of debate so it is clear to the public what is happening. I will be enforcing these rules strictly this evening and ask that members behave in a respectful manner. Before we move to the first item, I will ask the Democratic and Constitutional Service Manager to conduct a roll call to confirm members present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello again, members. So when I call your name, if you could turn your mic on and confirm that you're present. Councillor Aitken.
Present.
Councillor Ali.
Present.
Councillor Allen.
In attendance.
Councillor Ash.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Ayres.
Present.
Councillor Bashir.
Present.
Councillor Bisbee.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Bond.
Present.
Councillor Sandra Bond.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Burbage.
Present.
Councillor Casey.
I'm present.
Councillor Sereste.
I'm here.
Councillor Coles.
I'm present.
Councillor Day.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dowson. Councillor Dowson, if you turn your mic on. No, not quite.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Dowson.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Farouk.
Present.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, present, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
I am here.
Thank you. Councillor John Fox.
Present.
Councillor Judy Fox.
Present.
Councillor Goodwin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Harper.
Present.
Councillor Hemraj.
Present.
Councillor Hiller.
Yes, I'm here, Pepper.
Councillor Hogg.
Present.
Councillor Holditch.
Present.
Councillor Howard.
Present.
Howell.
Present.
Councillor Hussain.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Amjad Iqbal.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Azar Iqbal.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jamil.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Present.
Councillor Joseph.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Present.
Councillor Lillis.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Councillor Nadeem.
People, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gul Nawaz. Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Present.
Councillor Over.
Present, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Coyam.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Rush.
Present.
Councillor Sandford.
I'm here, yes.
Councillor Seaton.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Shahid.
Here, Pippa, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Simons.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Skipstead.
Yes, here, thank you.
Councillor Warren.
Present.
Councillor Walsh.
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Wigan.
Present.
Councillor Yezin.
Present, thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. And Councillor Yergetin.
Present.
Thank you. So that's 57 councillors present and accounted for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before I go agenda item 1, Councillor David Over, you raised your hand. You want to say something? David Over.
No, I don't believe I did. I may have been experimenting with the controls, but no, I've not raised my hand at all for anything.
Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 1. Are there any other apologies? Absence?
Mr. Mayor, we've had apologies from Councillor Barkham and Councillor Haynes. Are there any others? No, I think that's it. Just those two. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest from members this evening which are not already recorded separately on their individual register of interest? Councillor Walsh, raise your hand.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to declare in connection with motion 8 that I sit on the board of Natural Cambridgeshire, and in connection with motion 13, I am a landlord of a property in the local authority area. Thank you.
Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In respect of motion 8 regarding Natural Cambridgeshire, I've taken legal advice and I'm told that I don't actually have an interest to declare, but in the interest of transparency, I would just like to say that I'm a board member of Peterborough Environment City Trust, and they are participating in the John Clare Countryside project. Thank you.
Councillor Holdridge.
Item 13, landlord, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Chaz Nawaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 13, I'm also a landlord.
Councillor Nadeem.
Item 13, I'm also landlord in Peterborough.
Councillor Sarasti.
I'm also a landlord, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Same for me, Mr. Mayor. I own an additional property.
Councillor Ali.
I'm also landlord, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also a landlord.
Councillor Jamil.
Chair, I took legal advice on this, and even though my interest is declared, for the sake of transparency, I'd also like to declare that I am a landlord within the local authority.
Councillor Hogg. Councillor Hogg.
I am also a landlord.
Councillor Allen. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an inherited family property of which I rent out. That is declared on my interest, so I don't think it needs to be declared here, but I will do as the others are doing so.
Councillor Amjad Iqbal.
I'm also a landlord.
Councillor Farouk.
Same as me, Mr. Mayor.
And I also declare myself, I'm also a landlord. Thank you. Councillor Azhar Iqbal.
I'm also a landlord.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 4th of March 2020. The minutes of the full council meeting held on the 4th of March 2020. I would like to move approval of these minutes. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Do I have to stand up still? But I wish to second the minutes. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Murphy has his hand raised.
Councillor Murphy.
Can I just check why he has his hand raised?
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Murphy.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I'd just like to raise before we consider to approve them. They're not typographical errors or spelling mistakes. There's an error on page 10, an error on page 26, and I think maybe Councillor Sanford may want to comment on page 14. On page 10, about the fourth paragraph in, after a vote was taken and defeated, it then says that group leaders were invited to join and the meeting reconvened in the next line. Anybody who was at that meeting or watched it on the feed will know that some considerable time happened to occur in between there. And on one occasion, I moved next business. And indeed, Mr. Mayor, I recall I did under a point of order, at least one point of order, pointed out that your option, Mr. Mayor, was for you to adjourn the meeting. You then did adjourn that meeting, though you did ask for how long. So I need somewhere in the minute the history to be reflected correctly. And finally, on page 26, going over to page 27, when I was making a supplementary question, you invited me to make a third supplementary question to Councillor Seaton, which I made, and neither that nor the response have been recorded in the minute. So on those basis, not spellings or corrections, they're not a true, accurate record.
Are you going to come back on?
I could suggest some words that may get us forward, or we can leave it to another meeting.
Have you got any seconder, Councillor Murphy? Have you got anybody seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Sanford, would you raise his hand? Would you like to?
Councillor Sanford, you raise your hand. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Murphy made reference to the item on page 14 that he said I might be concerned about. It's the record of what happened on the motion on biodiversity. I did have a number of concerns about the procedure that was followed at the meeting, but I've had discussions with legal officers, and there's going to be a paper taken to the Constitution Committee, so I don't particularly want to make an issue of it.
So are we going to have a vote? So
Can I just ask a question? Because at the moment it looks like we might be voting on something we don't know what the full details of what Councillor Murphy is suggesting.
Councillor Murphy, have you got words you want to insert or delete?
Yes,
in the
by
minutes?
way of a point of personal explanation, if we were to insert something on page 10 explaining that after some time and a point of order being made by a move to next business by Councillor Murphy and a point of order being made, the mayor then adjourned the meeting. I think that's correct because it's the mayor that has the power to adjourn the meeting. And on item page 26, just insert a supplementary, an additional question was asked by Councillor Murphy. We can check on the wording on that later.
Are there any other objections?
Councillor Sanford has his hand raised again.
Councillor Sanford, you have raised your hand again.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I haven't taken it down from the previous occasion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any objections again?
Are there any other objection?
Councillor Holdridge has raised his hand.
Councillor Holdridge. Councillor Holdridge, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure what you're going to vote on. I seconded the minutes because I believe them to be a true record. You moved them as a true record. So, but what are you voting on?
Amendment.
So,
Can we ask the monitoring officer, please? Yeah.
yeah, so Councillor Murphy has suggested the insertion, I believe, of a couple of lines in the minutes. Can you just clarify that one more time, Councillor Murphy, because I didn't get a note of it.
Yes, so on page 10 to insert, some time passed.
We
And
don't
moreover,
normally- we don't normally record what time it takes to discuss motions.
So Councillor Murphy moved that next business be taken. There were also points of order raised, including one by Councillor Murphy. After some discussion and advice from officers, the Mayor adjourned the meeting.
Okay.
And on page 26, just to insert, an additional question was asked by Councillor Murphy to Councillor Seaton, of which there was no response. That should cover it.
Right, well, I think, Mr. Mayor, unless everyone's agreed with those amendments to the minutes, you're going to need to take a vote on this, whether or not the minutes should be amended.
Councillor Seaton, you raise your hand. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm slightly confused by the point that Councillor Murphy just made, which is an additional question was asked by Councillor Murphy, but no response was given by myself. Given that with a question, with questions, there is one follow-up question from a member. If Councillor Murphy asked a second follow-up question, you would have ruled that out of order. So I don't think it's right to put in the minutes that there was another question and I didn't answer it. That doesn't make sense. Could the legal officer perhaps rule on that, please?
As I haven't got the record of the meeting in front of me, it's difficult to say what order everything happened in, but the record, the minutes are a record of the decisions taken at the meeting. They're not intended to be a record of everything that happens. They're not a verbatim record. We don't normally record who asked questions and the response to them. It's a record of the decisions taken for and against, and any key points raised in it. So whether or not a question or an answer given to it has been raised is not normally something that we would include in the minutes, I don't believe.
I think that's absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor, and I still wish you to move the original minutes.
Mr. Mayor, on a point of personal explanation, I think we're getting there. So on the first item, page 10, we need to accurately reflect that it was the Mayor that adjourned the meeting. We don't need to talk about the length of time. On item 26, it's neither here nor there whether a response was given to a question, but the Mayor did invite me to ask another question. That would cover it. That is my memory, and I'm pretty sure on it because I've checked the audio, and that's where we're at. And the minutes are therefore accurate.
I don't think there's any disagreement that the Mayor adjourned the meeting, Councillor Murphy. If you feel that's important to put in, I don't think there's an issue with that. As to the question point, as I said, we don't normally put all the questions that are raised and responses given into minutes. So it's a matter for you whether you wish to continue to take a vote on this. Do you want this to be put in or not? The fact that you asked a question, in which case we're going to have to take a vote. Happy to amend that the Mayor adjourned the meeting because that was what happened.
Yeah, I think that's cool. That'll get us there. The reality is an additional question was put because the Mayor asked me to put one. That's history, that's time, it's recorded elsewhere. So that's fine. With those changes on page 10, I'm happy if the council agrees the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I think you just need to ask, has everyone agreed to the minutes now, please?
Are they all in agree with this?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Mr. Mayor, I think you can take that as being agreed and move on.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 and 5, mayor's announcement and leader announcement. There are no announcements from myself or from the leader this evening, so we will move straight to agenda item 6, question from members of the public. Agenda item 6, question with notice by members of the public. There have been 6 questions submitted by members of the public this evening. Question 1 from Charles Fenner. Mr. Fenner, would you like to ask your question relating to the Bretton splash pool and other outdoor facility?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many families will not be able to have a holiday away this year, the Bretton Water Park is a much needed facility for children and young families, especially for general fitness, mental health and play. Now that the government has allowed outdoor sporting and leisure facilities to open, many residents are asking in Bretton when the water park will be opened.
Would you like to respond, Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Fenner, for the question. Luckily, I did have it written down because I'm afraid your microphone was breaking up during your presentation. Let me say I agree that we need to do all we can to provide leisure opportunities for our residents this summer, perhaps even more than ever. Clearly, the current situation, it's vitally important that we keep our residents and staff safe from the effects of COVID-19, and any reopening of our facilities must be done in ways that achieve that. As you all know, COVID-19 infection rates in Peterborough had been a recent cause for concern, albeit that they now appear to be reducing. I asked our Director of Public Health to review the advice previously provided to see if there's any possibility of reopening the Bretton Splash Park, the Central Park paddling pool and the Lido this season. Now, COVID-19 hangs heavily over all of my questions that I have to answer this evening, and therefore the risk assessment that was performed on Monday by council officers and health and safety team allows me to be perhaps somewhat despondent, but at least straightforward with the chamber this evening. We have the risk assessment for the regional pool, and I can tell you, sorry, the regional pool, the Lido, and I can tell you that the advice we have now received is it's highly unlikely we could get that facility open safely. And if we do, it would mean not the Lido we are used to. It would mean a controlled queue. It would mean controlled swimming times of no more than 45 minutes. It would mean that there would be simple lane swimming, so not the fun experience that families enjoy at the Lido we know and love. It is doable. It's going to cost an awful lot more money to do so. We're talking about a variance of around £58,000 to get the Lido open, and it would take at least 4 weeks, perhaps 5. This is still to be looked at, but I'm afraid I'm fairly despondent in respect of getting it open relevant to the risk assessment. I've had also a report that the Bretton Splash Park cannot open this year due to safety with distancing and the fact there's only a very small fence that kids could climb over without any way of stopping them, unless you had security guards ringing the whole facility. I'm waiting for a further update on Central Park, but there are logistical issues with getting that open.
30
so
seconds.
I'm sorry not to be encouraging with what I'm saying, but that is the facts as they stand at this moment in time. Thank you.
Mr. Fenner, do you have a follow-up question?
No, so Councillor Allen has answered my follow-up question as well in that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Question 2 from Natasha Morgan. Ms. Morgan, would you like to ask your question relating to speed camera on Maze Walk? Councillor Hela, would you like to respond? Oh, sorry. Sorry, yeah.
Ask Miss Morgan again.
Ms. Morgan, would you like to ask your question relating to speed camera on Maze Walk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following a petition that collected over 100 names in support of a speed camera being installed, as well as other measures, can the council give me assurances that action will be taken to improve the safety on Mayor's Walk, Peterborough? Can I get a commitment that we will see these measures put in place at the earliest opportunity, and that the council is fully supportive of making our roads safe for our residents, particularly our school children?
Councillor Hiller, would you like to respond?
Yes, of course, Mr. Mayor, and I'd thank Natasha for her question. The council is, of course, fully supportive of ensuring safe roads for all road users, and appropriate engineering interventions are considered for locations with evidenced poor safety record. The received data, however, is reviewed annually across the authority, and this informs our programme of highways works for the year. A speed survey was undertaken in February 2020, which showed the average speeds near Ed Walton Avenue to be 26 miles an hour westbound and 28 miles an hour eastbound, which, based on those average speeds recorded, shows good compliance with the appertaining speed limit. At the present time, I'm afraid, given the calibrated data collected, there are no measures planned for Mayor's Walk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Morgan, do you have a follow-up question?
In the light of COVID-19 and the fact that people are being encouraged to walk and to cycle for their own safety, and as the residents obviously don't feel safe, would it not be an idea to possibly fast forward looking at this again?
Councillor Hiller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, I thank you for that follow-up question, Natasha, which actually makes perfect sense. But I respectfully have to tell you that we can't act on forward projections in that I have to tell you the highways team acts by the action I've described. It has to be proved that there's a problem, I'm afraid. And I'm told the council officers have determined that the problem of persistent speeding here is not evidenced reality. You and the people that signed your petition think there's a dangerous speeding problem that exists on this road, but the council's calibrated testing equipment reports otherwise, I'm afraid. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Question 3 from Stuart Hall. Mr. Hall, would you like to ask your question relating to the clubs and services?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is for Councillor Allen. During the 2nd of July 2020 Scrutiny Committee meeting, Adrian Chapman stated that the council was looking to work with local sports clubs and community groups to deliver sport and leisure services. Can Mr. Allen clarify what was meant, the particular clubs and the specific services which would be included, and can any members of the council say which sport clubs and community groups they have been liaising with regarding the provision of sport and leisure services? Thank you.
Councillor Allen, would you like to respond, please?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Stuart. I'm able to give you an overview, having been in touch with the officer, and I haven't got specifics in front of me, but I can give you a definite overview that it's important that this council, for future delivery arrangements for services that are transferring back to the council from Vivacity, are carefully considered and fit for purpose and affordable. It's also important that whoever is responsible for running these services has a clear vision, is ambitious to offer the best services possible, and is committed to improving the quality of life for all of our residents and visitors. When the contract with Vivacity ends in September, all services will transfer to the council, and we will then take time to consider all options, including entering into discussions with interested parties, including local sports and leisure clubs, cultural leaders, friends groups, and others. We've already been contacted by many of these organisations and interested parties, although detailed discussions cannot yet commence, but they will be progressed in the forthcoming weeks and months. Any group that is keen to share their views is encouraged to contact me so that I can alert the responsible officers. I am aware that the athletics and running clubs have shown interest in participating at the embankment track, and that's commendable, and we look forward to speaking to members of that particular organisation. Thank you, Stuart. I hope that's sufficient.
Mr. Howe, do you have a follow-up question?
If possible, could Councillor Allen clarify any of the communications around the athletics club and any propositions which he has looked at?
I was aware, let's try again. I was made aware today of, I think, 3 separate contacts between the athletics club, and I know there's 2 clubs come together to make one now, so I can't give you an individual name at the athletics club, but there was 3 telephone conversations or email exchanges with council officers with regard to the future of the club. I haven't got the dates in front of me without digging into my emails, but it is happening, and we are keen to work with the athletics club if that's the particular organisation with which you are connected. I can assure you of that direction of travel.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Question 4 from John Peach. Mr. Peach, would you like to ask your question relating to the Lido?
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Mayor. It's a question to the Leader of the Council, Councillor John Holditch, to say residents are delighted to hear of your intention to retain and keep as many vivacity facilities and services as possible open when it was announced they had handed the contract back. Now that the government have announced that outdoor swimming pools can reopen, I and many residents feel it is of utmost importance to get the Lido and Central Park paddling pool open as soon as possible. This is particularly so in light of the many families not being able to afford to get away on holiday this summer and children needing to use facilities that have been closed during lockdown. Opening the Lido and the paddling pool would also enhance people's fitness, mental health and general well-being, as well as making a statement that Peterborough is open again. From talking widely to members of the Vivacity Board, city councillors, council officers and Paul Bristow MP, there's a willingness to get the Lido open as soon as possible, but cost is a problem. I've personally made a cheque here made payable to Peterborough City Council for £10,000 to go towards getting the Lido open this season. Can I ask if you and other members are able to contribute either financially or by volunteering time and even head up a fundraising appeal to get the rest of the money and issue instructions to get the Lido open as soon as practically possible? I understand Vivacity have said the council can take full receipts from any admission charges, which should offset some costs. Get the Lido open and Central Park's paddling pool open as soon as possible. Keep fit, stay healthy, and save children from drowning in the river at Embankment, Orton Mere and Ferry Meadows this summer.
Councillor Allen, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Peach. I know you directed your question to the Leader of the Council, and I'm sure Councillor Holditch will back up my response. I would say that I'm on record of sharing your views, Mr. Peach. I think we should have got the Lido open, the paddling pool open, and indeed Brecon Splash Park, but other things have come into play. COVID hangs heavily over any decision we make, and as I mentioned to Mr. Fenner in my first response, we have recently had a risk assessment that makes all of these now highly unlikely. But let me say, I acknowledge your generous, selfless offer of £10,000 to make a financial difference. But it's not just about finance, it's about health and safety. And as I say, the risk assessment now makes this highly unlikely. I would say if you are looking to still put forward your generous donation, if anybody else is listening to this meeting, or indeed, Mr. Peach, you have others who will contribute, that may well help the financial aspect of getting the pool open. But primarily, it's going to take at least 5 weeks to get it open. If it opens, and I'm referring now specifically to the Lido, if it is opened, it will not be the Lido we know and love. That wonderful family experience in the summer months. where children and parents are there all having a good time together. It will be purely an exercise pool with lane swimming, limited admission, limited use of changing facilities, and only timed swimming periods of up to 45 minutes maximum, and then a cleaning period to follow. So although your desire to get the pool open is shared by me, I'm afraid I am now telling the chamber that it's highly unlikely in view of the health and safety advice we've received.
Mr. Peach, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you. I would just like to say thank you for your reply. I note everything, but I understand, and I'm obviously not medically qualified, but a lot of people that will use the paddling pool and Breton Park and indeed the Lido are young people. And I believe if you're under 18, you're twice as likely to be struck by lightning as catch COVID. And there's not many 18-year-olds in Peterborough that are struck twice by lightning. But I have talked extensively to Liz Robins, the Cambridgeshire Director of Public Health, and talking to her, I find it very strange that she was only asked to give a report on the opening of the Lido and not any other pools in Peterborough or indeed the Cambridge Lido. So I wondered if in some way her decision could be either reviewed, or do I have to have it judicially reviewed, which would obviously cost money and time.
Councillor Allen, do you want to come back?
I most certainly do, and that's quite a pointed question, Mr. Peach. I refer again to the risk assessment. The risk assessment, looking at the Lido now, because we have 3 topics under debate. The Lido, if it does open, means that the cafe would not open. There'll be one-way swimming system in place. There would be no use of the paddling pool or the smaller, less deep pool. It would be a travesty to call it the Lido as we know and love. It would be purely an exercise pool. Now, looking at others in the country, I'm told that there are very few open-air Lidos open in the country, a small percentage of what's actually out there. And I keep coming back to the fact that I'm on record, indeed, way back at the start of the COVID lockdown, that we should try our best to get these facilities open. Some families will not be able to go abroad this year or indeed afford a UK holiday. They deserve something in Peterborough, and we should try to get them open. But I come back to the risk assessment, which keeps telling us that it's not practical either for health and safety reasons or on the back of the health and safety reason, the implications of financial costs to the council. But I again come back to you, your generous offer is well received and we're grateful for it. If you can find some people to back up your generous offer to the tune of about £58,000, then it's doable, providing you're patient and realise it will take until the end of August to get it open. And then the lift season will only take us into September, well past when the schools are opening. So I'm sorry not to be more optimistic and more positive, but that's how it is. We are where we are, as they say.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Question 5 from Rohan Wilson. Mr. Wilson, would you like to ask your question relating to the pop-up cycle lane on Crescent Bridge?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This new pop-up lane has made it possible for the first time for people to cycle over Crescent Bridge in both directions and in safety, separated from motor traffic. The new lane connects neatly with the existing safe route, which passes beneath the Crescent roundabout to and from Cowgate, Priestgate and Cathedral Square. So far, this is excellent. However, at present, the pop-up lane's continuation on Thorpe Road is ill-defined. By that I mean, if you cycled from town up the hump of Crescent Bridge, you're rolling down now towards Thorpe Road, and suddenly you find that lane has ended. You are on the carriageway and there's oncoming traffic facing you. There is no instruction to tell you either to go onto the narrow pavement to your right or to cautiously cross Thorpe Road at that point, where it is often can be very busy. So it's not going to work without that continuation. Back to my script. Cycling legally along Thorpe Road at present is allowed only on the carriageway. Most local people will therefore choose not to use the new lane. Now, the majority of people, the majority of the public say they would love to cycle, but they are scared of cycling in traffic. So people will choose not to use the cycle lane and thus not cycle into town. The existing footway on Thorpe Road is actually very wide in parts, but is not at present allowed for cycling. The new pop-up lane, therefore, is simply not yet linked up to make a continuous route from and to its local catchments, which are Longthorpe, Netherton, West Town and South Bretton. The question, will the City Council permanently retain this new pop-up lane, making it part of a safe, effective and much needed route to and from people's homes by linking it along Thorpe Road and by giving it priority at side roads?
Seconds.
The alternative is that it may be little used. It would then risk being removed as a failed experiment and a major opportunity would be lost. Thank you.
Councillor Heller, would you like to respond, please? Councillor Heller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your question. The council welcomes the funding recently received from the DFT to enable us to reallocate road space whilst the traffic levels are measurably less, in order to encourage more people to walk and cycle into the city, the purpose obviously behind the grant. You'll be aware, Mr. Wilson, we've already installed a number of measures, with others set to be rolled out over the coming weeks. Where such infrastructure is being installed, officers are undertaking vigilant and timely monitoring, which will allow the council to understand the impact, positive and negative, of any intervention and determine the next steps that should be taken to balance the needs of all road users. It would be misleading of me, Mr. Wilson, to guarantee the permanence of these measures. Following the initial tranche of funding awarded to the council, officers are now developing proposals for the second round of funding. You may be aware. These proposals will aim to make more sustainable changes to support both walking and cycling across the city. And I can confirm to you, Mr. Wilson, that I've already asked officers to consider the area, the whole of the area of Thorpe Road, its length. Officers will consider this and your own comments, of course, which are very valuable, alongside other proposals to form the best possible bid. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, do you have a follow-up question? Mr. Wilson.
Yes, I'll try to make it very brief. People who actually cycle in Peterborough tend to be restricted to those who are quite bold, and many times have I cycled over Thorpe Road legally on over the Crescent Bridge legally on the carriageway. The vast majority of people do not consider that, and therefore some sort of facility is needed. Remember the Peterborough City Council's adherence to the road user hierarchy. Pedestrians come first, cyclists second, and motor vehicle users come towards the bottom.
30 seconds.
It seems to me that our highways people are barely considering cycling at all. Witness the answer to the Mayor's Walk question, where apparently it's all right for motorists to go over the bridge at 28 miles an hour, when that too is an important cycling route towards the centre of town. Will the City Council please make sure that its engineers take full account of the needs of walking and cycling as well as motor vehicles?
I have to reply in the affirmative, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for your follow-up question.
Thank you for that. Question 6 from Mohammed Hasib. Mr. Hasib, would you like to ask your question relating to antisocial incidents in Lincoln Road? Mr. Mohammed Hasib, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask my question, Mr. Mayor. Over the several weeks, we have seen a number of incidents on Lincoln Road, Millfield, with some businesses not respecting lockdown rules and serving alcohol on their premises. This has led to antisocial behavior, littering, loitering, and intimidation of employees and customers of other businesses. Will the council, along with other agencies, commit to taking tougher action with zero tolerance, supporting local businesses, and increasing enforcement, investigating businesses that break the rules, and having a greater visible presence, particularly during evenings and weekends along that stretch of Lincoln Road?
Thank you, Mr. Hasib. Councillor Walsh, would you like to respond, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank Mr. Habsib for his question. I'd first of all like to reassure Council of the extensive amount of work in place across the organisation and our partners to keep residents, visitors, businesses and employees safe. And our environmental health and licensing officers have investigated compliance throughout the pandemic, both proactively and reactively. Non-compliance has been dealt with through engagement with the businesses, visits to determine what COVID-19 secure measures have been implemented, advice where measures are inadequate, and follow-up visits where necessary. All licensed premises were contacted prior to reopening to offer assistance on how to do so safely and what is expected of them in relation to collecting customer details to assist with the NHS test and trace programme. The Council's COVID-19 rapid response team continues to work hard to engage business owners, including on matters relating to social distancing, good hygiene practice and queue management. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Mr. Hasib, do you have a follow-up question?
No, I don't have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7, petitions. May I remind you that in accordance with the Council's rules of procedures, anyone presenting a petition will have 1 minute to outline the aim of the petition. There are no petitions from the public this evening. Are there any petitions from members? Councillor Ali.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much indeed. I have a petition here of a number of pages from businesses and residents of Millfield who are concerned, are requesting urgent action of antisocial behavior and some of the issues that already Muhammad Asib has alluded to, crime, and they feel that the area has been neglected. So, Mr. Mayor, this petition is the first step in ensuring that authorities take that area of our city seriously and stem this rising crime in the area, because the residents and the businesses, many of them who abide by the law, trying to run, work very hard, they feel that they are being let down through the lack of action. So this petition is asking the council and other agencies to up their game. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor David Seaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a petition signed by 1,117 people. It states to the councillors of Peterborough City Council, on Wednesday, 29th July, you will be asked to vote on motion 12 to conduct an audit of street names and any public monuments or other buildings this council is responsible for, which name individuals or organisations, to review any that have racist links. We, the undersigned, wish to express our strong hope that you will vote against this motion. We want to reassure you that there are many millions of people across our country who do not believe that our history and heritage should be either destroyed or altered. There are not many public voices currently speaking for this silent majority, but please do not mistake that for apathy.
1 minute up.
Or worse, believe that the people of Peterborough or the UK support the current runaway cancel culture. They do not. There is no public majority calling for this review. It will not be the end, but will only lead to further trouble and division. A minority currently has a loud voice.
Mr. Mayor, could
but
you
our
enforce the
duty-
time limit, please?
Sorry, Councillor Sanford, if you wish to put your hand up, you're welcome to. Please don't interrupt. A minority currently has a loud voice, but our duty is to preserve our collective
Time is up.
heritage
Time's
and
up.
identity.
Why are we
We
still
are
talking?
but custodians of our history. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Seaton, time is up. Thank you. It's on.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Who's that point of order? Who?
Yes,
Oh, Councillor Wigan.
Councillor Wigan.
Mr. Mayor, it's a point of personal explanation. This petition was submitted to all councillors today in response to my motion number 12 later on. I've been advised by Fiona as monitoring officer that this petition is not permissible by the council due to lack of address details. Thank you.
Councillor Van Fitzgerald.
I don't think that is a point of order, Mr. Mayor, and it should not be accepted.
Can I ask Fiona to advise, please? Fiona, you're there.
Sorry, it is a point of order if it's raising a standing order about admissibility of petitions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me to
Thank
speak. I'll try and do, I have two petitions to present tonight. One of them has already been sent to Democratic Services, but via Lewis Banks, and another one here that I will hand deliver tomorrow, both on the same subject. It's been noted tonight by a number of people, Mr. Wilson being one, about the council's transport hierarchy and how we treat cyclists. You will note that the council is implementing government policy and trying to increase and encourage cycling across the city, which can only be a good thing. And I know my colleague, Councillor Hiller, is very keen to implement and improve cycling for everybody. But
2 seconds.
It has to be done, obviously, in context and consultation, which the council is doing. So early indications are from 2 schemes put forward, which they may have moved on, but nonetheless, I was asked to present the views in terms of objection of some 43 traders, mainly represented by the Cowgate Traders Association, to object to the council's initial proposals on Cowgate and the surrounding area, and also 27 businesses on Broadway, and I will just say that those are the petitions and they object to those schemes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Murphy, will you say what your point of order is, please?
Point of order is on the submission of petitions. I know we're in different times, but as I understand it, they have to be physically or electronically submitted. Particularly petitions from members of the public. I understand some councillors may not have got that tonight, but if we can clarify that before the next meeting, that will be helpful.
I have clarified it with the members that have asked me, Councillor Murphy. They are to submit them electronically to the Democratic Services Officer. That's what they need to do, and then just refer to them at the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. Agenda item A, B, and C, question or notice. This relates to question to the mayor and the leader of the member of the cabinet.
Point of order.
Councillor Murphy, what is your point of order?
Yeah, I had my hand up and I spoke with the secretary earlier on about a petition that's been submitted electronically to the council, and I was going to present it tonight, one that actually exists and has been put in. So may I do that?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. This petition, I won't take up too much time. It's from residents on Mayor's Walk in both Central Ward and Ravensthorpe and down to Thorpe Road. And I think Mr. Rowan Wilson and Natasha Morgan explained this earlier on. People are concerned about the speed and the serious accidents that have been there. We've heard tonight that collaboration was done at Ed Walton Avenue. Well, if you know Spittal Bridge, you can't get a bike and a pedestrian and a car over there, or one or two of those things. If people are hitting 28 miles an hour, What speed are they hitting by the time they get down to the Grange into Thorpe Park Road? As 100 people have signed this petition so far, can I ask that the lead petitioner is allowed to take it to the relevant scrutiny committee? Or perhaps could the Cabinet have a look at it in view of 20's plenty of initiatives to encourage cycling and do something now? I do note there was a speed warning sign there a few years ago, but it's been taken away. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor David Seaton, you raise your hand. David Seaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of order and ask the advice of the legal officer. My understanding was that at the start of this section, you asked that councillors just read out the point of the petition. We've now had two councillors make a speech around the petition. I think Councillor Ali and Councillor Murphy has just done the same. Are we following a different approach in this electronic meeting than we would normally follow in full council?
Can I ask Fiona?
The mayor was asked anyone presenting a petition that they would have 1 minute to outline the aims of the petition. I think that's what they've been doing.
Thank you.
My understanding, legal officer, is that in the past, we have only been able to read out what the petition is about and not have 1 minute to explain it. That appears to be a change to our constitution.
Standing orders state that the person presenting the petition will be allowed to address the meeting briefly for 1 minute to outline the aims of the petition. So I'm not sure how that's a change.
Thank you, Fiona. Can I go to Councillor Holdridge, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree. These are speeches. They're not anything to do with what's written on the top of the petition. And we ought to start going back to what is on the top of the petition and not a speech or a tirade about what is in the petition.
Mr. Mayor, could I raise a point of order, please?
I'm ahead first. Sorry, Nick.
Fiona, can you come in, please, Fiona?
Sorry, Councillor Sandford, can you tell me what the point of order is, please?
I think Councillor Chris Wigan is going to raise the same point, so I'm happy to defer to him.
Yes, sorry, I think my initial call of point of order might have been obscured by Councillor Seaton, to whom I apologise if I interrupted him. My point of order is that the previous point of order I raised about whether or not Councillor Seaton's petition was permissible, I don't believe we got an answer. So could you clarify, please, if the petition from Councillor Seaton is accepted or not? Thank you.
I haven't seen Councillor Seaton's petition. On the ruling about whether or not something's acceptable or not will be done after the meeting.
My understanding is that it's the petition that was emailed around to all councillors earlier that you gave me a ruling on.
Yes, but I haven't seen whether or not those signatories are valid or not, so I can't comment at this stage. It takes a little bit of time to do that. We don't do it at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that you...
Ask Fiona to repeat because we couldn't hear.
Fiona, can you come back, please, because we couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I just suggested I think we've covered petitions now, so you might want to move on to the next item.
Agenda item 8A, B, and C, question or notice. This relates to question to the mayor, the leader or the member of the cabinet or the chair of any committee or subcommittee. I have allocated the question to the most relevant members to respond. Please note that any question relating to ward issue will be answered in writing only. These answers can be found in the question report within the additional information pack. The time limit for this item is 30 minutes. Question will be taken as read unless there is objection to this. There have been 22 questions submitted by members this evening. 3 of these are ward related. Question 1 from Councillor Haynes. Councillor Haynes has submitted her apology for this evening meeting. Councillor Celesti, would you like to respond to the question relating to Argon in her absence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aragon Director Services have been going through a period of transition since the start of the contract to ensure all services are operating correctly and in the most efficient way. And one of the other groups of people that we should be grateful for and happy that they have done such a wonderful job is Aragon's team in keeping our city going during the virus pandemic, let's face it. So, you know, they've been a bit busy, as you can imagine, with some people being not furloughed, but isolated and working extremely hard. They have some commercial contracts for ground maintenance, vehicle maintenance, etc., and they are working on a trade waste proposal. Initially, this would be to take local authorities' trade waste and then would look to expand from there. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Question 2 from Councillor Hammerage. Councillor Gerald, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Hammerage in relation to the COVID-19 employee testing?
Let me get myself unmuted, Mr. Mayor, and get the answer just before me. So I can respond and thank Councillor Hemorrhage for her question. The public health team for Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council work closely with Peterborough's environmental health team and with Public Health England to monitor any outbreaks of COVID-19 in local workplaces. If several cases occur amongst the workforce of any one employer, it may be appropriate to test staff who do not have symptoms as well as those who do. This is called asymptomatic testing. The process needs to be agreed between the employer, the local public health team and Public Health England to ensure that the right resources are put in place to deliver and analyse the test results. So far, this type of testing has been delivered for 2 factories in Huntingdonshire, and whilst these were not in the Peterborough workplace, several of the staff, included in those testing, were Peterborough residents. So we will continue to review the test data on positive cases amongst Peterborough residents and on workplace outbreaks, and we'll work with the regional colleagues to provide asymptomatic testing when it is appropriate to do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hammerage, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. Do you have numbers on when people are showing symptoms and may be asymptomatic? Do we know how many people will be tested? So say, for instance, we know there's 5 people been found from a workplace that have got symptoms. Will you then start look at testing the whole workforce, or will it be a certain amount before you consider testing the whole workforce?
I'll refer to my answer already given, which addressed that question. So if several cases occur amongst the workforce of one employer, it may be appropriate to test other staff who do not have symptoms as well as those who do, and that is called asymptomatic testing. So in answer to your question, I think it's yes. Now, if we want any details of anything that we've undertaken so far, providing it doesn't breach patient confidentiality or any data breaches, Liz Robin will be able to fill in any blanks, I'm sure, outside of this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Question 3 from Councillor Alice. Councillor Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Alice in relation to layer service?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and indeed, thank you, Councillor Ellis, for your question. As I've mentioned in a couple of my answers earlier this evening, COVID-19 hangs over tonight's questions to me like a heavy cloud. We have the issue of COVID-19 lockdown, and with that also compacted for the fact that our leisure provider handed in the keys halfway through the lockdown period. So it has made things very difficult. I'm delighted, however, that we were in a position to announce last week reopening of a number of vivacity services, including our vital libraries, leisure centres, the regional swimming pool and the athletics track. They will all be opened over the next 3 or 4 weeks. As acknowledged in your question, it's clearly vital that these and any other services can reopen safely with the protection vital and to both service users and the staff. And every location needs to be subject to a full COVID-19 risk assessment before opening. We will continue to work with Vivacity, who remain responsible for all of their services until the 16th of September, to safely reopen as many facilities as we possibly can, based on national guidance and local public health guidance. And I will most certainly keep Council fully informed of how we progress.
Councillor Alice, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a follow-up supplementary question. Thank you to Councillor Allen for his answer. Will Councillor Allen please elaborate on the current plans for these services, which I mentioned, the hydrotherapy pool, the Breton Water Park, swim schools, etc., i.e. current plans for some of them for next year, how they're going to be run? Will the City Council be running them, or are there other plans? Can you give us an update, please?
Okay,
Thank
to
you.
be exact is difficult, but I can state that the Breton Splash Park, which you mentioned, is highly unlikely to open this year because of health and safety issues as a result of our risk assessment. What was your next particular specific location, please, Councillor Ellis?
Hydrotherapy pool. My question about the water park was about next year, when hopefully will reopen.
Well, yeah, let's get Breton Splash Park open next year. Very important to the local community. Certainly support that. It needs some work doing, but let's get it done. With regard to the hydrotherapy pool, again, that's an important facility, but that is under review, and I haven't got an answer for you on that. But I am supportive of the need for that facility in Peterborough, but it's not in the immediate venues that we will be opening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Question 4 from Councillor Kayoum. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Kayoum in relation to mass testing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I note the question, although in reflection, I recall that it was Dr. Kayoum herself, not the Labour group, that made the recommendation. And in fact, the scrutiny group as a whole made the recommendation to look into the possibility of mass testing. And indeed, as a very responsible officer, Dr. Liz Robin did go away and talk to the relevant people. I think she's discussed this with Councillor Kayoum and in order to explore the issue and propose a further study. So the Director of Public Health for Norfolk provided background information on the proposed study, for which in final form and funding was not confirmed, and provided contact details for the lead academic at the University of East Anglia. Dr. Robin has emailed that lead at the university to explain that Peterborough City Council would be interested. That doesn't mean to say we'll do it, would be interested, because we would need to know the details, the implications, the costs, the resources required, whether or not we could participate, and outline the potential benefits of also carrying out the research with a more diverse population than Norwich. Some time ago, a response has not been received, however, since the question, and Dr. Robin and I have pursued a follow-up, so she's kept me informed, and in actual fact the latest news in that it is still an active idea that researchers are progressing and hope to get funding from government and backing from government. This will come back to us if things move forward and if there's an opportunity to work with Peterborough City Council. So it's positive in one way, in the sense that the door is open, but we will very much have to wait from East Anglia University in order to see if there's anything for the future. But nothing definite, but we have made the contact and we did follow through on the scrutiny recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kayoum, do you have a follow-up question?
I do indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Fitzgerald. And I did find the email extremely helpful from Dr. Robin. Point of clarification, when I made the recommendation, I absolutely made the recommendation on behalf of the Labour group and with the consensus of the Labour group as well. Now, my follow-up question to you, because time is of the essence, we are in very strange times. This is a global pandemic. We are part of that global pandemic as well. And we have the highest death rate within one of the highest death rates in Europe. So given the increase of cases in the last 2 weeks, evidence that mass testing decreases the rates of infection as demonstrated by studies that you refer to, thus backed by the Labour group recommendation, aiming for an outcome to prevent increase in infection rates, the fact that it's actually impossible to prevent cross-postcode travelling by residents within the city, leading to increasing infection risks and rates, how confident are you of the processes reflecting testing through mobile units, its specificity, and testing centres outreach covering and anticipating to protect the whole population, given the with track and trace and the validity of the collated data? Are we really preventing the increase of cases with the specified measures declared? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think Dr. Kayam also pushed the limits of timing there, Mr. Mayor, so I'll do my very best to answer. Although I don't think most of the question is relevant to the original question in terms of it was about a scrutiny recommendation. However, those members that are keeping a close eye on public health matters know that we will have ramped up our public health engagement in particular communities across the city in order to tackle this very, very important issue. I myself today have done news pieces with Dunya News and GOTV, as has Dr. Robin, to reach communities, particularly those in the Black and ethnic minority group who are more at risk to both serious illness and in fact death, which the stats have already told us. The increased testing regime we have put in across the city in particular locations, we are continuing with that. We're trying to test as many people as we can, but at the moment there are no mass mechanisms for mass testing that I'm aware of. But I am not a physician or an expert in medical matters or public health. And that's why I rely on Dr. Robin to advise, and I advise Cabinet and other members of her professional opinion. So I think in terms of Dr. Kayam, and I know you have a good relationship with Dr. Robin, is that, you know, those questions in detail can be taken up with her. And I would say the same to any other member, either come to me for briefing, or indeed Dr. Robin is very approachable if you have any specific concerns or specific technical questions. I wouldn't have, as you would expect, every single bit of information to hand this evening. But, you know, if there is anything that you want a specific answer to, please put that in writing and I will get the Director of Public Health to answer anything specific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question 5 from Councillor Murphy. Councillor Sresti, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Murphy in relation to the local electricity bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. I can confirm that I've instructed officers to undertake research into the upcoming bill, and subject to their findings being favourable, which I fully expect them to be, I'll indeed be writing to both Peterborough MPs asking them to support the bill through Parliament. And in view of the fact that we have got this national renowned project in Peterborough, which we call the Piri project, which will be taking both heat and power from our plant and switching it around the city. You know, this comes at an excellent time, and it's most opportune for our city. So hopefully there'll be no hurdles, and hopefully we'll be supporting it, and even more hopefully we should be able to do something really useful for our residents, and possibly the council make a little bit of money out of it too.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, do you have a follow-up question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the answering the question. So it sounds like this is not only beneficial for the country, it will be very, very beneficial for Peterborough. Can I ask why there was a delay in putting our support forward? But can I get thank you for that support, which I anticipate to be coming shortly?
I'm sorry, Councillor Murphy. I don't know anything about a delay with our support going forward. What makes you think there was a delay?
Rather than make a point of personal explanation now, it's been a few weeks since we first started corresponding this. Let's move on, and thank you for your pledge of support tonight.
Thank you. Question 6 from Councillor Robinson. Councillor Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Robinson in relation to reopening libraries?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and indeed I'm happy to respond. I was delighted that during our joint scrutiny committee meeting last week, our service director for communities and partnerships was able to confirm the arrangements for the gradual safe reopening of our library service. As reported, Central Library will open within days, followed by Bretton, Dogsthorpe, Hampton, Orton and Warrington by the end of August, and other libraries by the end of September, subject to them safe do so. I've set out clear plans now in place and would like to thank our residents for their patience during the most challenging of times.
Councillor Robinson, do you have a follow-up question, please?
Yes, I do have a follow-up question, but my first question did ask for the reasons of the delay of why we were one of the latest in the country. I don't feel that Councillor Allen had addressed that. I know the date hadn't been available when I'd submitted the question and he's confirmed the dates, but my questioning asked for reasons.
Well, I'm quite happy, if I may, to respond, and I think it's self-evident because, as I have mentioned previously in this meeting, we had not only the COVID lockdown to deal with in Peterborough, which impacted on the closure of libraries by necessity, and then getting them open had to be a priority. The priority was then diminished, or the ability to prioritise that was diminished, because our leisure service provider, Vivacity, had handed in the keys. So they had to get themselves back into gear. Don't forget, all their staff are furloughed, their senior officers are probably one or two of them in work. So we had to pull people back, or they had to pull people back to get the job moving along. So it wasn't ideal. And I think we're perhaps all somewhat frustrated by that situation, but it's where we are.
Could I now ask my supplementary question, if possible, please, Mr. Mayor?
I thought that was your supplementary.
No, that was asking for clarification on the first one.
Yes, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered if the cabinet member would be willing to liaise with Vivacity and offer PCC's comms platform support in terms of the annual library summer reading challenge. It's quite a vital element of children's reading, and in the year of our Peterborough Reads campaign, it is available online across the country, being run by libraries, but I only found out through much searching that it's available here. So could we offer them assistance that we would promote it better this summer in Peterborough, because I fear many families may assume that it's been cancelled altogether for the year.
You know, I think that's not a bad idea, but I would say that at the moment we still regard Vivacity as being autonomous, and I think that they would like to get on and get their own house in order to hand back to us, because certainly all services will go back to the City Council post mid-September, or when we take over the Vivacity estate. So, you know, it's on record now. You've suggested that. Perhaps Vivacity would like to pick it up, and I will ask them if they want to.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Thank you. Question 7 from Councillor Bound. Councillor Allen, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Bound in relation to Vivacity?
Another Vivacity question. Let me reassure Council that Vivacity have confirmed that it's their intention that nobody is financially disadvantaged as a result of the pandemic, a position we very much support. Clearly, membership terms and conditions will be fully honoured, and nobody will lose money or unused time on their membership. Second, and for further reassurance, the transition of Vivacity services is being carefully managed, and membership will transfer under the same terms and conditions as currently enjoyed by Vivacity members.
Councillor Bond, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. I do not have a supplementary question.
Thank you. We're moving on to question 8 from Councillor Ali. Councillor Holdridge, would you like to respond to a question from Councillor Ali in relation to an independent university for Peterborough? Councillor Holdridge. Councillor Holt.
Councillor Holt, you need to unmute yourself.
Got it. It doesn't like being unmuted. Right. Okay. Start again. Thank you, Councillor Ali, for your question. We've spent a long time developing a first-class university for the city, which is an £100 million project. The advice we received was that developing a traditional university did not meet the needs of the city or its business in the future. And so it became obvious that we needed to have a partner, and therefore the project was put out to tender. 10 applications were received, and ARU came as the best fit for us now and in the future, providing everything goes according to plan. It should become the University of Peterborough with awarding powers in 2028. I'm sure, like me, you would like to acknowledge the huge input the combined authority and Mayor Palmer has played in the success of this project. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ali, do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to Councillor Holditch for that answer. But I think the thrust of my question was that I want graduates, when they are awarded their degrees, that they should have, it's a degree awarded by University of Peterborough. It's very important that we put our city on the map. I have no criticism of Anglia Ruskin University. I'm not criticizing them, but I think as a city of 200,000 population, we need to be standing on our own feet. And that's what we have been promising our residents for a long time. But I appreciate the challenges that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Question 9 from Councillor Shaz Nawaz. Councillor Farouk, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Shaz Nawaz in relation to council personnel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nawaz, for the question. When filling up the application forms, providing information on your ethnicity is voluntary, and we therefore do not have any specific figures. However, I believe this council has demonstrated through its actions over many, many years its support of equality, diversity, integration, and cohesion. We review the council's policies, procedures, and practices on a regular basis with a view to ensuring they're inclusive and non-discriminatory to all people. Clearly, recruitment of directors very much depends on who applies. Such applications for senior roles are often small in number, and it would be difficult to force people of BME origin to apply for jobs here at any level. However, I would be happy to sit down with Councillor Nawaz and our head of HR and chief executive to discuss this issue. I am sure that we could explore the issue with the Society of Local Authority chief executives and the Trade Union for Local Authority chief executives and senior managers, Alice, to see if we can provide useful suggestions to them. Thank you.
Councillor Shaz Nawaz, do you have a follow-up question?
I do, and thank you very much for that answer, Councillor Farouk. See, the issue that I have is with the statement that you've just shared clearly demonstrates that enough isn't being done. Just by saying people from the BAME community aren't applying, we need to look at the reasons why they aren't applying and what we can do differently to have senior officers at the council. Because I know the conversations that you and I have had in the past, we both agree that organizations should reflect the communities that they serve. At the moment, that isn't the case. And I know people sometimes say, oh, it's got to be the best person for the job. But we've got plenty of talented people from the BAME community, just like our mayor here tonight, the Mayor of London, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Home Secretary, and many others. So what are you going to do to create a culture and an environment, Mr. Farouk, that when I ask you this question next year, you can give me some tangible results? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Farouk, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. And I suppose this matter is not personally just wholly responsibility for me, but for you as well, equally. And as I suggested, if we sit together and we can go forward together and encourage more BAME people to come forward and to apply for the director jobs, we'd be happy to promote that. However, looking at the statistics of the City Council, out of the 1,016 people employed, 130 of them are BAME, and and the remaining are normal origin. So it's all for us to work together and promote more people. But this city council is a clear example of, we look at the cabinet and how many members of PME are in the cabinet, and it reflects, and this, we want to reflect this throughout. Thank you.
Point of order, please, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Farouk just referred to the remainder being of normal origin. Can you just confirm what that actually means, normal origin, please?
Apologies. Apologies. I meant to say white origin.
Thank you, Councillor Farouk.
Thank you, Councillor Farouk.
Question 10 from Councillor Hogg. Councillor Farouk, would you like to respond to a question from Councillor Hogg in relation to Fix My Street?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hogg, for the question. This has been investigated further with Aragon, and we can confirm that the defect did come through to their help desk. But due to the description of the request, there was some confusion and delay in identifying the responsible service area. It was raised and investigated as a tree request, a shrub cutting request affecting the highway, property damage and allotment request. Before a site visit was fully determined, the responsible service area to action, the allotment is also self-managed, so Aragon had to establish ownership responsibilities of the fence. When Councillor Hogg, you asked Aragon if it had received all the Fix My Street requests, they advised that only one was received. It has subsequently transpired that only one councillor request was logged. They did indeed receive all of the Fix My Street requests for this job. We apologise for the length of time this has taken to resolve, but can now confirm Aragon are receiving the Fix My Street requests and have a process in place to ensure these jobs are processed moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg, do you have a follow-up question, please?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify essentially what it is. I believe the issue is that items that are reported under the public footpath or cycle path section go to highways, and that they are then looked at and decided whether or not it's an Aragon, something that Aragon needs to look at rather than highways. And I just wanted to make sure that Aragon are now received, or there is a procedure in place to make sure that those emails from highways to Aragon are being read and actioned.
Councillor Farouk, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Yes, indeed they are. As you probably appreciate, the whole purpose of Fix My Street was to create efficiency by sending the issues directly to the relevant department, whether it was Aragon or whether it was highways, etc. Issue here was that there are certain areas which cross path between highways and Aragon, but now we have a process in place where the response is picked up by both and then gets dealt with, so the resident gets the service straight away. Thank you, Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Councillor Farouk. Question 11 from Councillor Sanford. Councillor Sarasti, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Sanford in relation to garden waste?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Sanford. The monthly service has only been offered to those residents who previously subscribed to the service, so it's not citywide. If we were to adopt a citywide free monthly service, this would have significant increased costs, and we would need additional vehicles and staffing. When we carried out a composition analysis in summer 2019, it showed that the black bin had 12.1% of garden waste in it. There will be a further composition analysis in spring 2021 so that we can see what the situation is. And the fortnightly collection resulting in getting considerable tonnage. And of course, as you know, the HRC is also being well used, with garden waste being delivered to the HRC up by 40%. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford, do you have a follow-up question, please? Councillor Sanford.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're all aware of the financial constraints, but I think we're also aware that when the when the charge for brown bin waste was introduced, there was a massive drop in the amount of waste coming in through the brown bins, and there was also a massive drop in number of people participating. In the area I'm in, I think I'm now about the only one of about 65 houses that actually has a brown bin. So could he, given the fact that I'm told that since we've had the monthly free service, there has been a bit of an upsurge in the amount of waste through. So could he at least consider the implications of bringing back the free service? Because I think it would be immensely popular.
I'm happy to consider that, Councillor Sanford. And if we could reintroduce a free service and could afford it and spend that money ahead of many of the other calls on our budget at the moment, some of them very serious to try and stop people dying, I'm happy to do so. Thank you for your question, Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Councillor. So that's the end of the question. So we'll move to other items.
I have a point of order. Is that possible, Mr. Mayor?
What is your point of order, Councillor Skipstead?
Some time ago, I suggested the way that questions should be ordered was that there was a round of questions, so that you had people who wanted questions, more than one question. You had one round and then you had a second round. So it wasn't that one person got two before anybody else got one, and that was agreed. Looking at the list of questions, it seems that some people have been allotted two before others even get one at the end, and that was agreed some time back.
Pat, do you want to come in on that? I do remember you saying that, Councillor Skipstead. I know that we normally do that.
Examples are Councillor Nawaz, Councillor Murphy, Councillor Sanford have had two on the list before Councillor Jamil and Howell had any at all at the end of the list.
Yes, that's just to confirm. Yes, so the round system was introduced. The two questions from Councillor Jamil and Councillor Howell were unfortunately only received later after the ordering was taken place.
Right.
So that was why they were put at the end, just because they were received late.
Okay.
Thank you. Now we move on to agenda item 8D, question or notice. This relates to question to the combined authority representatives. The time limit for this item is 15 minutes. One question has been submitted this evening. Question 1 from Councillor Hogg. Councillor Holdridge, would you like to respond to the question from Councillor Hogg in relation to the letter sent to the Minister of State for Housing Communities and Local Government? Councillor Holdridge.
Councillor Holdridge, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll get there in the end. Don't worry about it. It is my view that the Minister is out of order in sending an open letter, as most of the issues had been resolved or under discussion with his civil servants. When setting up an organisation of this complexity from scratch through custom and practice, inevitably there will be issues and differences of opinion. It is a great pity the Minister did not highlight the tremendous success of the combined authorities had: transport, road and rail, housing, Peterborough University, local town planning, to name but a few, to which our city has benefited in the region of £100 million. Thank you.
Councillor Hogg.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Fowler has his hand up. Can I ask him why he's got his hand up, please?
I'm just to be honest with you, a little bit interested. Is the Mayor in the town hall? And is he sat next to somebody?
Why is that a point of order, Councillor Fowler?
Well, newsflash, he should be social distancing where appropriate.
Councillor Fowler, that's still not a point of order, I'm afraid.
Well, is he sitting with somebody or not? That's all.
The Mayor is in the town hall and is socially distancing in the town hall, Councillor Fowler, but that's still not a point of order.
Councillor Hogg, do you have a follow-up question?
Sorry, that's kind of thrown me off my my kilter a little bit. Essentially, there seemed from this this letter, it seems that there is a gap between the in terms of the relationship between the Minister of State and the Mayor, and I want to know what is being done to repair that relationship, and also will the letter be published to councillors?
Councillor Holdridge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, we were informed this afternoon, I think on 3 occasions, their questions have been answered in writing, and the Mayor has sought a meeting with the Minister, which he has been granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holdridge.
The publishing of the letter.
Point of personal explanation, Mr. Mayor.
Can you tell me what your point of personal explanation relates to?
It's, as a representative of the combined authority, it was published this afternoon at the overview and scrutiny meeting and discussed for 2 hours. People can go on online and have a look.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy.
Agenda item 9A, Cabinet recommendation budget setting processes. Agenda item 9A is in relation to the budget setting processes. Information on this can be found in the agenda pack on pages 35 to 52. Councillor Seaton, would you like to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would. Members, it was my intention to present initial budget proposals for our medium-term financial strategy to this July full council. However, clearly, as Councillor Allen has advised us many times tonight, the pandemic has caused great uncertainty for all councils, with our prime focus in Peterborough being on how we respond and protect the lives of our residents. Officers have managed that response in unique circumstances with great professionalism, I believe, and kept us up to date throughout with weekly reports and detailed regular briefings. And I think that has been our priority, and rightly so. Hence, this report recognises that and adjusts our budget policy framework procedure rules from a rolling budget approach to that of 2 distinct phases, one for consultation in the autumn and the second in the spring of 2021. The 2021 process was specifically approved by full council, so this report regularizes the position for the current year. I'm therefore pleased to recommend the report to full council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Holdridge, will you second the recommendation and either speak now or
second.
like to speak later in the debate?
Yeah, happy to second, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call upon any other speakers? Councillor Sanford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've read with great interest the report that the Cabinet has put forward, and I've listened to Councillor Seaton's introduction. But I'm a little bit confused by his explanation, because he was talking as though what they're proposing is a departure from the normal procedure, whereas my recollection is for the last 2 or 3 years we've had a budget process that's operated in 2 phases, when we've had some proposals gone to council in December and a further lot have gone at the end of February. So I'm a little bit confused as to how this is a departure from the normal process.
Councillor Seaton, would you come back, please?
No, oh no, sorry.
Councillor Murphy, sorry.
Councillor Murphy, why have you got your hand up? You got a point of
Yes,
order?
well, I'm just trying to double check where we are. My numbering on this page, with page 54, 55, 56 maybe, it goes from item 2 to item 7 to item 9 to item 5. I'd like to speak on the, just past the budgetary control bit, on the reasons for special urgency and decisions, but the numbering has really thrown me out. If you see on the agenda that's been published.
We're
So
on
if you could
agenda
tell us
item 9A on the budget setting process.
what page is that on?
It's on page 35
Okay.
of the agenda pack.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Seaton, are you wanting to answer?
Thank you. I presume I'm now summing up. Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Yes, that's a fair point. We have often done it in 2 phases. That's not what's in the budget policy framework procedure rules. So I think it is a technicality that I do need to get a change to 2 phases signed off. We did that last year. I'm just doing the same again. It's within the Constitution that I need to do this. But thank you. I'm pleased to commend the report to members.
Holdridge, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
I think Councillor Seaton's just summed up. Thank you very much. I'm happy with that.
We will now move to the recommendation. Are any members in objection to this proposal? Now I hand over to the head of.
Mr. Mayor, I think nobody's raised their hand to say they're objecting, so I think you can take that as agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 10, question on executive decisions made since the last meeting. This is in relation to the record of executive decisions detailed on pages 53 to 66 of your agenda pack. Members may ask questions directly relating to each decision. The leader will introduce this item and any question will be answered by the leader unless he refers them to another member. I would remind councillors that they should ask questions on the decision in the reports. All questions should be relevant to the decision itself and should I feel that any preamble is unreasonably long, I will instruct to ask their question immediately. Can members please note that once I have moved on, I will not accept any question from previous pages. Councillor Holdridge, would you please introduce the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the reception and adoption of the executive decisions since the last meeting. In doing so, I need to bring to council's attention that on May 20th, the CMD, the decision request to implement the city centre public space protection order. This should refer to Councillor Walsh and not Councillor Fitzgerald. If we could record that in the minutes, please.
I will take each pages in turn, and could members please refer to the title or reference number of decision when asking a question. Page 53, 54, 55. Ed Murphy, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is on special urgency and waiver of call-in provisions. It refers to a number of decisions. Would the administration, executive members, agree with me that actually some of these could have been dealt with more timely, and with a bit of planning, we may have been able to avoid the use of waiver and special call-in procedures? There have been occasions when you've done the right thing and gone over the good practice and actually put out a decision that you may not need to have done. And I know Councillor Fitzgerald did one of them, but on a number of others, timetabling could have meant we didn't have to do this, and we have asked for this to be reviewed previously.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, isn't the cabinet member going to answer Councillor Murphy's question first?
Councillor Holdridge, will you come back, please?
I haven't gone anywhere, Mr. Mayor. Oh, yes, I understand Councillor Murphy's question, but I think it's a little bit unfair at the moment where you've got all officers that aren't doing their traditional job, and sometimes these timing does slip. And I don't think any of these were taken out of line and needed to be taken in the time scale that we did. So they needed emergency attention, but not a practice we would wish to continue with.
Thank you, Councillor Holdridge. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's on precisely the same item. I think it's one of the reasons these decisions need to be reported to full council is so that full council can check that the cabinet is not behaving unreasonably in exempting these decisions from scrutiny. And I can see with some of them, like the one on urgent swabbing, that maybe that is urgent, but could the council leader or the cabinet member explain to me why it was deemed urgent and why it was exempted from scrutiny that the council should turn down the intensity of the street lights? I've thought about this considerably, and I can't possibly see how that could be deemed to be an urgent decision.
If the member would be happy, I'll get him a decisive question in writing to that, because I can't answer that. So I'm sorry.
Well, I can, Leader, if you'll
Can
allow.
you? Okay, yes, please. Yeah.
Happy to answer that. I think it was a specific reason, and it was to enjoy the savings, basically, rather than go through an extended period without turning those lights down. As soon as we turned those lights down, we started to enjoy the savings for the benefit of the taxpayer. It was as simple as that.
Councillor Sanford, you want to come back? Councillor Sanford.
Yes, I want to come back on that, because I would take some convincing that turning the street lights down 5 days after they're actually turned down was deemed to be of such a degree of urgency that you could effectively switch off the council scrutiny process. I go back to my original point. Full council needs to check that the cabinet is behaving in a reasonable way in exercising these powers, and I will take some convincing that they're acting in a reasonable way in this particular instance.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, I'm not attempting to convince Councillor Sanford one way or the other. He's asked a pointed question, and I'm giving what I consider as an expedient answer. One has to also to bear in mind that the traffic levels were a lot lower whilst these lights were being switched off, and of course it would be easier for us to introduce the lower levels of light whilst the traffic levels were low, as well as the cost savings, the immediate cost savings, as I've said before, so that the taxpayers can enjoy those cost savings. Nothing sinister about it. That's what we decided to do, and it was expedient to move quickly with this decision.
Thank you. Thank you. Page 55, please. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, it's on page 55 and it's number 98. It's the one about capital to refurbish the town hall that was made in April, when we knew we were in a pandemic and people were working from home, and the Foundation Trust were probably reviewing whether they needed to rent a big place like the town hall. Have the council reviewed this decision, and has it actually gone ahead in practice?
I think that could go to Councillor Hiller as well, his property.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that. I mean, there is the decision on page 58, Mr. Mayor, and I was expecting to somebody to query that particular decision, but if we're still on page 55, as I understand it, is that right, Mr. Mayor?
On
so,
55, yeah.
Oh, okay. We authorise the main refurbishment works of the Town Hall North to enable the letting of the space to the CPFT, as you'll be aware. It's to generate income, Mr. Mayor. Having already approved the enabling works, if we hadn't taken this decision, it would leave the Town Hall North in an unfinished state, and it would mean that we'd be left with a vast vacant area which would fall into disuse, all the ongoing associated costs that would incur, security potentially. There would be very significant reputational, legal and financial consequences associated with any renegotiation, Mr. Mayor, of the agreement for the lease, which has already been signed with the CPTF. And there was plenty of notice for this decision. There was no call-in for this decision, was there?
Thank you, Councillor Heather. Now we can go to page 56, 57, 58, 59. Councillor Murphy.
Councillor Murphy, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, it's on number 100, which is the St. Michael's Gate one. And I'd just like to say, well done for actually reviewing and reversing the decision that had been made to buy this above market value and to continue leasing it, even though the council did say this was the most expensive temporary accommodation we got. And I'm glad.
Murphy, have you got a question?
Yes. Are you pleased now that you listened to the call in and reversed the decision of the previous cabinet member?
I don't know whether Councillor Allen wants to answer that. Do you want to answer that, Councillor Allen, or do you want me to?
I'm very happy to come in, Leader. I think that we looked at the freehold potential as a serious option. I think that we then reviewed it and have come up now with the need to continue to have the facility available to us for a couple of years. I mean, it's one of those things that's a dynamic process. It may come back to us cheap and cheerful and we can buy it. Who knows? But we're going to lease it in the meantime.
If I could add to that, Leader, I completely agree with Councillor Allen. I mean, thank heavens, Councillor Allen and I took this decision, Mr. Mayor, as we'd considered purchasing these properties, and our investment could have reduced in value considerably, as Councillor Allen has already alluded to, because of COVID. Councillor Allen and I determined, we talked long and hard about this, we determined that due to the ongoing success of our housing needs team in reducing homelessness presentations and the subsequent reduction in the demand for this type of temporary housing, we didn't need to own them as originally planned. As Councillor Allen has quite rightly said, it's a moving feast with this type of proposition, and we are not afraid of taking the right decision at the right time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heather. Can we move on to page 60? Councillor Wigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to ask about decision 103, the disposal of Whitworth Mill. It's been reported now that the plans to build the boutique hotel are off and that the plots are to be resold by the council. Could the cabinet member update us where we are on that and provide reassurances that any future sale of the land will include facilities for arts and culture as were in the previous plans? Thank you.
Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, happy to come back on that, Leader. Thanks for the question. The decision, most will be aware that the decision to dispose of the Fletton Quay sites 7 and 8 for the best considerations would help the council realise a capital receipt and free it from further expense in maintaining the what was a pretty dire building, the moribund Whitworth Mill. Relieving it from, again, it's a risk and public money that would otherwise we'd incur if we chose to develop the site on our own. The recommendation enables the council to develop 2 strategically important sites without further claims on the public purse. It will also help to complete the regeneration of Fletton Quays, as we all know. There was plenty of notice for this decision. Again, there was no call-in with regard to the original purchaser. The original purchaser indeed did pull out, has cited COVID as the reasons for pulling out, but I can reassure members this evening that we have another firm interest in the site, and we are negotiating currently with a potential purchaser at a very acceptable figure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heller.
Can we go to page 61, please? Councillor Hogg.
Yes, it's to do with decision 110, the dimming of the streetlights. I just wanted to know, was the implementation of this decision have anything to do with the number of streetlights that were permanently on for an extended period of time with a serious waste of electricity?
Thanks. Another one for you, Councillor Heller.
Cheap shot, Councillor Hogg. No, nothing to do with it at all.
Page 62, 63, 64, and 65. Now, Councillor, we can now take a short comfort break of 15 minutes. Please return at 8:15. Thank you. Thank you, members. It's 8:15. We had a break. And the next item, agenda item 11, question on the combined authority decision made since the last meeting. This is in relation to the record of combined authority decisions detailed on pages 67 to 114 of your agenda pack. As per the virtual meetings protocol, questions and answers in relation to this item will not be taken verbally. All answers to the question received in advance of the meeting are included in the additional information pack. Agenda item 12, motion on notice.
Mr. Mayor, would it be in order to, could I make a point of order, please?
Can you tell me what the point of order is, Councillor Sandford?
Yes, thank you. I would like to know if it is in order to move a procedural motion to change the actual order that we're going to talk about the motions. I'm conscious that motion 12 is on an issue of massive public importance, and I think we are going to run short of time. So I would like to propose that we bring number 12 up and debate it first.
All right, that is an order, Councillor Sandford, as a motion without notice under Standing Order 20 to do that.
In that case, I would like to move a procedural motion to bring because motion 12 is about the Black Lives Matter, and I think, you know, whatever you think about the motion that's been put forward, it's an issue of massive public interest and massive public importance. So I would like to propose that that be debated first. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to see if everybody's in agreement to that? Or if there's any opposition, we'll have to take a vote. So if anyone's opposed to it, can you please raise your hand? Yeah. We have a number of people raising their hands. Okay, so we need to take a vote on it. Pip, is it possible to do that electronically, or do we need to take a roll call? We haven't planned for this.
I'll have a go doing it electronically. Bear with me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, councillors, we're going to have a go at the electronic voting. So we're voting on Councillor Sandford's proposal to bring the Black Lives Matters motion number 12 to the first item for motions. Therefore, could you vote? The vote is now live, please. Thank you. You need to press for, against or abstain, whichever button. If anybody's got any problems, can they please raise their blue hand and Dem Services will talk you through. Councillor Allen, I believe you raised your hands.
Yes, I don't have a voting form on screen.
Okay, which way would you be voting?
I would be against that proposal.
Against. Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Similarly here, Rachel, it's Councillor Andy Coles. I'd be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Everybody else okay? Has everybody voted?
We're still waiting for a few. Just to confirm,
okay.
You need to also press submit when you vote. Got 3 people left to vote.
Thanks, Pippa.
There should only be one Pippa if Councillor Allen and Councillor Coles have given their votes verbally.
We have 54 councillors voted, so 56 with Councillor Coles and Councillor Allen, so it's one person left, that's correct.
One person left to vote. Is anybody having problems or? That's
We've
it.
got them
Thank
now,
you.
they
That's
voted
it.
now. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so the vote is now closed. So we have 24 in favour, we have 32 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, it's defeated. Thank you. Pippa, do I have to share the results or anything? No.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion
Thank you,
one,
Ms. Mayor.
motion from Councillor Joseph.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nawaz.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I made a request at group leaders that the motions on which all groups agree, we could propose second and go to the vote. So is that still going to be the case?
Councillor Nawaz, we have a number of motions that we believe are going to be agreed by all groups. The proposer and seconder will still do their speeches, and then if there's nobody else speaking at that stage, then we will go straight to the vote.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you. Motion one from Councillor Joseph. This motion is in relation to gender equality. Councillor Joseph, I understand you would like to move an alternate version of your motion, which can be found in the additional information pack. Members, if there is any objection to Councillor Joseph moving her alternate motion, please raise your virtual blue hand now.
No objections? Nope.
There is no objection.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no objection. So we will now, this is now agreed. Thank you.
No. Need to read that.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're just asking Councillor Joseph to move her altered motion now, please.
Councillor Joseph, please, would you move your alternate motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to move the altered motion. As you know, the basis of the motion is about equality, both in particularly for women, and the findings of a parliamentary survey which was carried out last year. The findings of the survey were quite shocking, and in spite of the legislation, that women are still being treated in this appalling manner. Prejudice in any form is reprehensible, whether against a person's gender, colour, religion, sexuality. And it is fair to note that women suffer prejudice, not only from men, but women as well. Legislation alone does not preclude prejudice. Diane Abbott, Dawn Butler and Murray Black, to name 3, are women who've been subjected to the most vile and disgusting abuse, death threats and verbal abuse, and are clear examples that legislation does not change people's views, it merely prevents some people from airing them. All women shortlists are one way in which political parties across the globe have attempted to address the disproportionate ratio of men to women in their ranks. Many say this positive form of discrimination results in substandard candidates, and yet they fail to see that by cronyism and the old boys club, it is more likely that substandard candidates get through than this positive form of discrimination. Let us not forget that those who are the first or token candidates bear a huge responsibility to work harder and prove that they are there through their right and their ability and not through positive discrimination. And it allows future women to take up their rightful place on governing bodies. As a council, we have a duty to ensure that we create a welcoming and supportive atmosphere for those who are elected or employed here. As of 2017, only 4% of local authorities had a parental leave policy in place for councillors. And in other councils, arrangements for leave after the birth of a child is discretionarily based on the arrangements with the leader at the time. It surely cannot be right that a female councillor should have to come cap in hand to request something such as maternity leave, which is a basic right. We must create a culture which encourages women to take up their place within council. And by culture, I do not mean a mission statement of platitudes. Culture is about taking accountability and ownership and ensuring that women are welcomed and valued for their valuable contribution to this council and the role it plays. A task and finish group would look at the feasibility of childcare and other ways in which we can, through education and culture, change the views of those who wish to place barriers, visible or otherwise, that prevent any woman from coming forward to enrich the fabric of this council. Thank you.
So, Councillor Kayoum, will you second the motion or either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an absolute pleasure to be seconding this motion, and I reserve my right to speak.
I will now ask the monitoring officer to call for any further speaker.
Councillor Walsh, you have your hand raised. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to address the council on this motion. First of all, I'd like to say that I am very glad that Councillor Joseph agreed to the alteration in the wording of this motion, which effectively gives the opportunity for all the issues she has raised to be considered properly and fully by a task and finish group. It is certainly important that women should feel safe, comfortable and supported in their role as councillor. And no woman should feel that the free expression of her views is in any way hindered by her gender or personal circumstances. It concerns me that Councillor Joseph feels that changes need to be made locally, and I am very interested in hearing what the task and finish group's recommendations are. On the issue of behaviour, I can say without reservation that the council chamber should be a place where elected representatives feel they're able to freely express their views. Politics is traditionally a rough and tumble environment, but common decency and respect towards all members should be the order of the day, no matter how strongly we may feel about the issues being debated. I think tonight's meeting has run very well and I have seen really no problem, but let's look at that. Councillor Joseph has referred to an LGA policy for parental leave, and I believe for clarification, this has been put forward by the Labour group on the LGA, but please correct me, Councillor Joseph, if this is not correct. Finally, I would just like to say that whilst I am totally supportive of women of all ages taking on political roles, we do need to be cognizant of the fact that if public money is required in order to do so, then this must be weighed against the very challenging financial position the council finds itself in. As we slowly exit from a global pandemic, is this time to be adding additional cost to our budget? This needs to be considered. However, I would urge that we support this motion, have a good look at what is recommended by the task and finish group to be set up, and see what we can do to ensure that this council reflects as much as possible the community that it serves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kayoum, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I totally align with the views of Councillor Joseph, and in terms of the recommendations from the task and finish group, I think that I'd be representative of the Labour group when I say that we would be in favour of that. I therefore would recommend that we move to the vote. Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Joseph needs to be given the opportunity to sum up if she wishes to do so.
Yeah, Councillor Joseph, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll be very brief. I totally take on board what Councillor Walsh says. Obviously, we must absolutely look at the financial impact that this will have, and you know, ensure, as she said, ensure that as far as possible we are able to make sure there are no barriers to women coming forward. And I would urge members to vote on this motion to allow the Task and Finish group to look into this and come back to us with a report on the feasibility and other findings that they may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joseph. I understand that there is a general consensus to this motion, but if not, please raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, we will take that as agreed.
We have nobody raising their hand, Mr. Mayor.
Agreed, yeah.
Take it as agreed.
Motion two from Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones, you have advised me that you no longer wish to move this motion. Therefore, we will move on to the next item. Motion 3 from Councillor Coles. This motion is in relation to bereaved families. Councillor Coles, I understand that you are happy to accept the amendment from Councillor Hammerage set out in the additional information pack. Would you therefore like to move your motion as amended?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also I'd like to thank Councillor Samantha Hemraj, who has agreed to second the motion and who was very kind to provide the alteration, and so we could agree a particular position on this motion. Today is the 3rd month to the day that I lost my wife to COVID. It's been one of those extraordinarily difficult times. I've been very lucky. I've been supported very well. I've even seen national coverage and thousands of people sending their best wishes to me. However, one of the things I do think we need to recognise is, whilst huge efforts have been put into supporting the living, that those who have been bereaved, those that we have lost, have not been recognised in the same way. And we have, in Peterborough Hospital alone, 152 people who have died, 251 for the North West Anglian NHS Foundation Trust area. That's an extraordinary number of people. And we've still got the pandemic with us, and the potential for losing further lives, I'm afraid, is going to be the case. We don't actually know how many people have lost family members, because we don't know that they were living in Peterborough at the time. We don't know if those family members are here. And nationally, there's been an extraordinary amount of loss of life. If you just think about World War I, 1,178 people died and are recognised as having lost their lives during that conflict in Peterborough. In World War II, 377. So you can see that this is a very significant amount of people. As far as I'm concerned, as I say, I've been very well supported. I've been very lucky, but I'm much concerned that we ensure that the people that have lost loved ones are well recognised. And so the motion goes to the idea that we should sit down and not just come up with a simple memorial, a service, something that might be of sudden comfort when it's safe and possible to do so, but that we consider very carefully what the right way is to remember the people that have been lost. So my motion proposes that we think of setting up a group of people from the bereaved families and also from our officers, and often after discussions with Samantha Hemraj, with Councillor Hemraj, to ensure we also consider the people who've been the heroes in the fight against this disease and ensure that they also have an opportunity to be recognised for what they've done in terms of a memorial, so they can remember the people that they've nursed or the people that they've looked after. So I'm most grateful that we've been able to discuss this cross-party before it was presented to full council. But I therefore present my motion for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hammerage, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Speak now. I'm very happy to support this motion with Councillor Coles with amendments from myself. As many people know that I'm a healthcare worker working for the NHS. What was missing from this original motion was the sacrifices and the efforts that NHS workers, care workers, volunteers and other key workers have made during this pandemic. After speaking with Councillor Coles and much discussion, it was agreed to make these amendments so the residents of Peterborough have an opportunity to attend a fitting memorial event for all lives lost in Peterborough with COVID-19 and for all of those key workers that have worked extremely hard during what has been a very stressful time. On this note, I would also like to congratulate all the key workers that has worked very hard during the pandemic, and hopefully things will start to ease from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hammerage. Can I call upon any other speakers? Councillor Hammerage, would you like to exercise your right to speak? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cole, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that we are very much in agreement. I hope that's the case and that we can move forward with this motion to set up a body with members of the council and other agencies and with the bereaved families so that we can then move forward with setting up an appropriate memorial for those that we've lost. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I understand that there is general consensus to this motion, but if not, please raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, we will take that as agreed. Agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Motion 4, motion from Councillor Burbage. This motion is in relation to the use of e-scooters. Councillor Burbage, I understand you would like to move an alternate version of your motion, which can be found in the additional information pack. Members, if there is any objection to Councillor Burbage moving his alternate motion, please raise your virtual blue hand now. Councillor Burbage, would you like to move your alternate motion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the motion. If I could just say a few words on it as well. I just want to point out this isn't a motion against the use of e-scooters, but more of a motion in favour of the responsible use of e-scooters. Clearly, e-scooters are a cleaner and greener method of transport, but they do also come fraught with dangers, especially when moving at speeds of 15 to 20 miles an hour, often on public paths and roads, creating dangers to other road users and, of course, to pedestrians. I've had complaints from residents in Breton where they've almost been hit by an e-scooter travelling at some pace. So just to keep it brief, to sum up, the use of e-scooters can be a great alternative to the car, but it needs to be done safely and with the right controls and licensing in place. So I'd therefore like to see this issue referred to the relevant scrutiny committees for further discussion, particularly in light of the Department of Transport looking for local authorities to trial rentable e-scooter schemes. I do hope my fellow councillors will support me on this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Coles, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Can I call upon any other speakers? Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. whilst I'm broadly in favour of moving towards more widespread use of e-scooters as an environmentally form of transport, I do have some reservations with them. I also feel that in terms of this motion that that we are a little late to be discussing this with vis-a-vis the government's pilot schemes. I think that there are a number of other local authorities that have more advanced plans than we have. It would have been nice to have been able to discuss this matter earlier, but I think, you know, with the number of full councils that were removed from the calendar since the last time we had elections, with a by-election, a general election, and then COVID, we've had very little chance to discuss matters in full I was going to say in this chamber, in full council. So from my point of view, I think in some respects that we should be sort of stepping back, letting these other authorities with more advanced plans to do the trials so that we can learn from them, and then maybe spend the time on advancing our plans with regards to cycling provision within the city, which still needs some work to be done. And I think the two go hand in glove, ultimately, that we need to make sure that the provision of cycling is better in the city, so that when we do get to a point where e-scooters are a viable option, that the infrastructure is already there, because it's the same structure as that's used for cycling. I just wanted to also touch on the issues that I have with e-scooters. I feel that you know, as already been said by Councillor Burbidge, I've seen an increased number of these scooters on the streets completely illegally, and I feel that if we get to a point where we're doing a trial scenario in Peterborough, this will only encourage people to think that it is okay to be able to use their own scooters before we have maybe the infrastructure in place to facilitate the use of privately owned scooters. I think, you know, the
30
specific
seconds.
things. Sorry. Okay, sorry. In terms of the maximum speed that needs to be placed on these scooters, the fact that it should be restricted to cycleways and roads only with proper lighting, and then we should also discover whether or not mandatory insurance should be in place for their use. It's debatable, because obviously with e-cycles it's not currently, and I shall just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. We got Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Burbidge, for bringing this motion. Originally, we were going to vote against it, but then with the amendment, I feel slightly more comfortable, because it's going to be reviewed by a task and finish group. But what I would ask for, please, is that older and disabled people and people representing those groups are properly considered and consulted in this. It's easy to think, oh, well, you just mean blind people, or you just mean people using mobility scooters or wheelchairs, but it's actually broader than that. People with dementia or Alzheimer's, actually anybody who's been shielded and is coming out into the community. I was shielded for 4 months. I find being out and about now actually quite stressful. So having new things on the street is actually, it does bring quite a lot of additional stress that perhaps we hadn't all kind of planned for. People with cognitive disabilities, people with issues like I have with multiple sclerosis around spatial perception and depth perception. I can fall off a curb easily enough, but with an e-scooter there, it would give me further anxiety about going out actually. If we're not going out, we're not going out to the shops, and that causes other problems for the city. Deaf and hard of hearing people, and also blind and partially sighted people. And remember that most blind and partially sighted people do not have guide dogs, do not have mobility aids like a cane. Their vision is not that partial, but they're still going to struggle when they're faced with quite a fast moving scooter coming towards them. So we are going to agree, but I would ask the task and finish group to please keep disabled and older people in mind. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, next.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, you can hear.
Just on the altered motion, unfortunately, the alteration, as I read it, has contained some errors. The alteration actually takes out by a task and finish group, which will make a recommendation to Cabinet. So it's doing the reverse of what Councillor Howells just said. And the alteration, it's the last paragraph on page 15 in the second line, talks about agreements as one alternative from of transport. So that sentence needs to be corrected. It probably should read one alternative form of transport. So if we're minded to vote for this, can we vote for it corrected and make sure that the motion as altered by Councillor Burbidge actually isn't a nonsense in English?
Councillor Alice.
Hello there. Yeah, I think on the whole, I agree with lots have been said. But I am concerned about the safety aspect, and I think Councillor Howells underlined that very well. So, to my mind, I think we are right to wait and see how it goes with other authorities before we go ahead with it. And so my view is not to support this motion at the moment.
Councillor Alice next. Councillor Alice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this, but because I thought it was just going to go through, and I was pleased that Councillor Burbidge accepted my alteration for for it to go to the Growth and Environment Scrutiny Committee, which I am on, to discuss in detail all the points that have been made between Councillor Burbidge moving it and me speaking. Yes, it would seem that there was an error on the wording about form. So it is a form of transport, but my alteration was that the Growth Scrutiny Committee will easily be able to debate this without having to refer to a task and finish group, where there's quite a lot of task and finish groups for things. I'm on a task and finish. Well, no, I'm on a working party for climate change. And I'm pleased, the one thing I am pleased about this motion is that it is something positive being brought from the council about alternative forms of transport. There are things that we need to look at, make sure it's legal, make sure there's not problems with other users, and that can be discussed in detail at the Scrutiny Committee, which I'm pleased to say will be on the 2nd of September. I'm so pleased that the individual Scrutiny Committees are returning, because until now, Councillor Hogg is right. We are behind because we haven't been able to meet on with certain meetings, but now we can move on, and we need to do more as a city council, looking at alternative forms of transport and other things to be able to try and meet the 2030 deadline for emissions. Unfortunately, my question earlier didn't get an opportunity to be asked, which was asking about climate change emergency. But I think it is important we do more and accelerate things, and to be able to discuss more forms of transport alternative to the car is important. Please support.
Thank you, Councillor Alice. Councillor Holditch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I ask the council to support this amended motion, because I know that the combined authority have been asked by the government to look at a scheme for scooters in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I think it's about time we had a view on it and indeed the controls on it. And I've had several emails from different disabled organisations who are very concerned about it. So I think it's just the right time that the council had a policy on it, either to reject them or put something in hand so we can control them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holditch. Councillor Nick Hanford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to be uncharitable to Councillor Burbidge, because I don't know at what point this motion was actually drawn up, because as my colleague Councillor Hogg said, we've gone nearly a 5-month period without having a full council meeting at which this motion could be brought forward. But I do think it's rather missed the boat. I think, to use the analogy, the boat or the e-scooter has already sailed, because having done a bit of research into this, what I found out is that at the end of June, the government actually changed the law to make these e-scooters actually legal on a public highway, and even before that, they'd been inviting councils to put forward proposals to take part in the trial, and my understanding is a number of trials have already commenced across the country. So I think what Councillor Hogg is saying is what we ought to do. You know, it can go to committee. We can have a discussion about e-scooters. I think there are arguments in favour, but I think there are also a number of concerns. But there's no point in having a committee meeting to discuss having a pilot when the pilots have already been taken forward. What I think we should be doing, and this is where I agree with what Councillor Ellis was saying, you know, the government has recently said it's now safe for people to go back onto public transport. The usage of public transport has declined dramatically. You know, we've got a situation where a lot more people are walking and cycling. So one of the questions I submitted for this council meeting, unfortunately didn't get debated, is what is the council's strategy for getting people back onto bus services when it's safe, actually encouraging more people to walk and cycle? Because at the moment, the strategy just appears to be, if the government will give us some funding, we'll actually take it up. Now, that is not a comprehensive strategy. So I think that's what the committee ought to be looking at. And I think getting them to look at this particular issue of e-scooters when the trials are already taking place is not something that we ought to be taking forward.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just come in at that stage in response to Councillor Sandford's point about whether or not it was legislation, not in terms of e-scooters. I believe the legislation has only been changed in relation to conducting the trials themselves and not in relation to e-scooters other than that. So in terms of what you're proposing tonight, I still think there's time to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, but the point is the government's already instituted the trials. I think that's
yeah, I think it's still possible for councils to join the trial should they wish to do so.
Yes, it is.
Councillor Cole, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this has been an interesting debate, it is correct to say that it is currently and still illegal to use an e-scooter on the public highway, let alone people who are riding their e-scooters about on residential areas. We've been lucky we haven't had accidents. The issue of this particular motion is to decide whether this council should participate in what is one of the most fastest growing area for clean transport for local journeys. So we're looking here at a potential rental, some hundreds of scooters coming to the city, provided by a rental company to individuals who have driving licenses, who have insurance, and who will use them on cycle lanes and away from pedestrian areas. I think most of us have received information, emails and other material from disabled groups. I remember one particularly from the National Federation of the Blind UK, who are very concerned and were showing some illustrations of some quite serious injuries that people had received in America. So I think it's right, if we are going to recognise that the government has permitted these trials to take place, that we should be considering it here, because we already know people are using e-scooters and they seem to be popular, notwithstanding the fact that they're currently illegal. But I think we need to have the debate about how safe they are, how we can integrate them as another type of environmentally friendly transport together with cycling. And I mean, to Councillor Sanford's point, yes, there has been a significant reduction in passenger numbers on the buses. This might well be a really good answer for short to medium journeys. So I therefore second this motion and I hope that it will be supported by members. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Burbage, would you like to sum up, please?
I pretty much summed up in my opening statement. Like I say, this isn't about not using them. It's about using them safely and with the right sort of licensing in place, so that we can protect members of the public and other road users from what could be a potentially dangerous situation. I just think that we need to have this discussion in the relevant scrutiny committees so that we can make our minds up one way or the other. I do hope people will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burbage. We will now move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are now voting on whether to agree to the altered motion with the typo change as moved by Councillor Burbage as set out in the additional information pack. Councillor Allen, would you like to indicate your vote, please?
I'm happy to vote for the amended motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Coles?
Thank you. I'm now working.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So everybody, Pippa?
We've just got one person left.
Thank you. Okay, the result of the vote is 48 in favour, 9 against, there were no abstentions. Therefore, this motion is carried. Thank you.
Five, motion from Councillor Hiller. This motion is in relation to Peterborough Citizen Award. Councillor Hiller, would you like to move your motion?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'll just say a few words when I sum up, if I might, Mr. Mayor. But I would like to thank Councillor Jamil for offering to second the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Jamil, will you second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I will speak now. I second the motion. I have no issue with it. I think as a city, we've got so many heroes, then we can begin to recognise some of them. And I think this motion is a start in doing that.
Can I call upon any other speakers? Councillor Walsh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say how warmly I welcome this motion, and I'm sure that all colleagues present today feel the same sense of gratitude to those people who stepped up in our communities and freely offered their time and even financial resources in helping others who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. I've worked very closely with council officers, partners and community groups during the current crisis, and having been involved with both the county and Peterborough City hubs, I have seen the very best of humane nature shine through at all levels and in all spheres. People who were suddenly required to lock themselves away in their homes were, through the selfless efforts of others, able to access much needed medicines and food supplies, as well as warm words of encouragement and comfort and much more. I very much look forward to working with Councillor Hiller on this initiative and seeing the richly deserved awards being made to members of our local communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could come in at this stage, please. It's now 9 o'clock, members, in accordance with the virtual meetings protocol that's been agreed by group leaders. The council meeting will end at 9:15 p.m. Does anyone wish to move a motion to suspend standing order 14.2 so that the meeting can be extended? If so, please raise your blue hand. Councillor Sandford.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that members have, had to endure quite a long meeting. It's the first time we've done it by this method, but I do think that there is at least one motion coming up later on, which is really important, and there is a massive amount of public interest. And I don't think we're doing the reputation of the council any good if we don't get a chance to talk about that. So I would propose that the meeting be extended. Do I need to specify for a particular period?
Ideally, you can do, yes.
But could I propose an extra half hour then, please?
Is there a seconder for that motion from Councillor Sandford?
I'll second that, Fiona.
Right. Rachel, I need to hand it over to you for a vote then, please.
Can I say, I think we ought to vote against that. I think we've been here long enough.
Pippa, can you set that up for me, the vote? Thank you. Okay, we're now moving to vote to suspend standing orders 14.2 so that we can extend the meeting by half an hour. Can you have your votes now, please? Thank you. Councillor Allen?
Councillor Allen, you're muted. You need to unmute.
I've the vote mechanism has come up now, so I can vote.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Everyone's voted, Rachel.
Thank you, Pippa. Okay, the results of the vote are 26 in favour, 29 against. There were 2 abstentions, therefore this is defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So if we continue till 9:15 and then in accordance with standing orders, there'll be no further debate and a vote will be taken on all remaining items on the agenda without further discussion.
Yeah. Councillor Hall is the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to present an alternative view here about this. The struggle I have with these types of awards is that they're not a level field for me, because they necessarily tend to exclude people who are sick and people who are disabled, who are also heroes. They're certainly heroes to me. I'm not denying that there's loads of heroes across the city to be recognised, but I prefer the approach that the Peterborough Telegraph has taken, and also Councillor Coles in his motion number 3 takes, about recognising everybody. I feel a lot more comfortable about that. That is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Judy Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say that I will be supporting this motion because since the pandemic started and lockdown was put in place, I have been so impressed by so many people helping one another get through this, and the community spirit that has taken place by many. It is so good to see. This has helped to make it even more important that we all should value our NHS staff, who we could not do without, plus many other key workers who have gone that extra mile too. So I would hope that everyone will support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sandford.
Sorry, I apologise, Mr. Mayor. I forgot to take my hand down.
Councillor Chasmas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Julie Howard makes a good point in terms of, obviously, there are people who are hard to reach, and I guess that's always a challenge. But as Councillor Fox has said, some of the work, in fact, all of the work demonstrated by the cross community has been remarkable. Of course, with people on the front line, they've risked their lives. But as I look within my own ward and within Millfield and, of course, far and wide, the work that's been done is fantastic. And I'm pleased that Councillor Hiller and Councillor Jamil have together put this motion forward, because it gives us an opportunity to recognise and support, and most importantly, to encourage others to come forward in the future for other types of work. And it's going to be fantastic to celebrate all of the support people have given this city, because I think without that, we would have been in a very dark place. So I will be fully supporting this motion.
Councillor Hiller, would you like to sum up, please? Councillor Hiller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I listened with great interest to all the comments being made. I would stress primarily that this is about people being nominated by both members of this council and also members of the public, of course. And this motion is to propose that the council formally recognises the city's unsung heroes, specifically, obviously, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've had many references to this tonight, and by introducing, as I propose, a special Citizens Award for their contribution to the response, it ensures, I think, that they are very, very particular efforts that have been made by so many individuals in this battle can be recognised and celebrated. I hope members will support this tonight, as it won't cost much in monetary terms, but it will reward hugely in terms of recognition and pride in the people of our city, and show that we really care. We really care about the efforts made and the risks. Let's not forget that, the risks they've taken on all of our behalf. So I do hope members will support this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hiller, we will now move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're now moving to vote on whether to agree the motion as moved by Councillor Hiller, as set out in the motion report. Okay, it's on your screen now. If anybody has any problems, just let me know. Is that it, Pippa?
We've still got one person.
One person? Okay, thank you. Result of the vote is 49 in favour, 8 against. There were no abstentions. Therefore, this is agreed. Thank you.
Councillor Hogg, you have raised your hand. Councillor Hogg.
I just wanted to clarify the situation with the close of the meeting at 9:15. I was under the impression that we had 4 hours for the meeting, and this meeting started at 6 o'clock. So surely the end of the meeting should be 10 o'clock, not 9:15.
That's usual standing orders, Councillor Hogg. The virtual meeting protocol has set the guillotine at 3 hours. It's been agreed by all group leaders. And you're just about to agree it when you vote in a minute.
Yes, so it hasn't actually been agreed yet.
It's been agreed. It's what we were working to for this meeting. Everything that we've been doing so far is based on.
But it hasn't been agreed yet by full council. We haven't got to the stage of business tonight where that has now been agreed. So therefore, we have to stick with the 4 hours. It has not been agreed by full council. If that had been at the beginning of the meeting and we'd agreed it already, then I would think you had a point. but it has not been agreed by full council.
I'm not disagreeing with
Point
you.
of order.
Councillor Murphy, what's your point of order?
Point of order. He may be correct that the protocol hasn't been agreed, and if you look at it, it uses a template from the county, so it needs a little bit of rejigging. But I think that council needs to bear in mind, if we have a vote on this, we won't get the hour, we won't get the 30 minutes. So it's probably a Pyrrhic argument, but he's correct.
I'm not disagreeing, Councillor Hogg. We could take a vote on it right here, right now to do that, to move that up, and we've been following it all the way through, but all group leaders agreed it. So therefore it was felt there'd be no need to do that.
I think that should be done, yeah.
Gerald, please, can we move on?
Councillor Hogg, if you want to move a motion, you can do so. You need a seconder.
Well, I don't want to move the motion because I want to continue on with the four hours that is the current status quo. If somebody else wants to do so, as you've just suggested, then I suggest they do that. PDQ.
Members, as Councillor Hogg is saying that he doesn't agree with the application of the virtual meeting protocol that's been agreed by group leaders, then I think we need to move that item up the agenda and vote on it now, please.
Fiona, I'm sorry to interject again, but just some clarification. I think if Councillor Hogg wants to move the motion, that's absolutely fine. But as Councillor Murphy, and I find myself agreeing with him, we've just wasted another 5 minutes in which we could have heard another motion, because we've already had this debate. And Councillor Hogg, you should take it up with your group leader, because to go against protocol with the other group leaders in the middle of a meeting is probably not the done thing. Ask your group leader, or he should have explained it to you, what was happening before the meeting.
Or maybe
Hogg,
that item should have been at the top at the beginning of the meeting instead of the end.
Well, everybody had the same agenda and could have suggested that at the outset. It's no good now when you only just realised.
No, I don't want it changing. I want to keep it at 4 hours. So why would I put forward a motion to stop something that I want to happen? That doesn't work.
Ask your group leader.
Sounds like a bid for a new Lib Dem leader.
May I suggest we move on, Mr. Mayor, if there's nobody putting a motion to that effect?
Great, carry on. We've got 4 hours.
We got the motion.
I think we're going to, if Councillor Hogg is still continuing his objection to this, then I think we need to vote on the application of the virtual meetings protocol, which is on your agendas further on down. And then
I'm happy to put that proposal, Fiona, if I get a seconder from the leader or somebody. Let's take a vote now on it and be done with it.
I agree.
Okay, councillors, we're now moving.
Point of order. Sorry, but the protocol as drafted talks about chairperson of the council and talks about committee structures. So it's not competent. It's not that bad, but it's got some fatal flaws in it. We have a mayor.
There are a couple of typos in which will be cleared up. I appreciate that.
They're not typos. They're paragraphs about the county council.
Well, they're not of any importance in relation to what we're talking about now, and will be fixed after the meeting and circulated to all members.
Fiona, if it helps,
so I think we need to move. Pardon, Councillor?
Sorry, as I've proposed it, I'm happy to accept it and note the sense or meaning of what is going to be achieved, even though the words, as Councillor Murphy says, yes, it's tardy, but it can be corrected. We know what the purpose and the thinking behind it. It's the protocol that remains the same, and I'm sure it can be tidied up and corrected. And if it's not, Councillor Murphy or anybody else can come back.
Indeed, it will be reviewed by group leaders anyway going forward. Councillor Holditch, you need to move the item 13B, the virtual meetings protocol, please.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to second as on the order paper tonight.
Yes.
Rachel,
do I need to read votes, or are we moving in a second? I happen to move it.
Can we go to the vote then, please? Thank you.
Please. Group, we are for this.
We are now moving to vote on whether to agree the recommendation set out on page 139 in relation to the virtual meetings protocol. Thank you.
Stop praying.
Still a few of you to vote yet at the moment.
Pippa, I can't vote. I can't, but the screen's gone.
Okay, how would you vote, Councillor Bashir?
For.
Thank you.
Please.
While that's totting up, Fiona, I make that 9:16.
Understand that. We're just going to finish this vote, Councillor Fitzgerald.
We've got many more, Pippa.
We've still got
being
two
helpful.
more.
How many more?
Two.
Two more, please. Two more. Okay, is that everybody?
Oh, yeah, not yet. Still waiting for two councillors to vote.
Are you happy to close the vote? There's two councillors not voted. No, we've got another one.
Waiting for one councillor now.
Have you included Councillor Bashir in that? Yeah. No.
Rachel, I suggest you close
Close.
the vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the results are in. It is 43 in favour, 11 against. There's one abstention and one person has not voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Could I raise a point of order, Mr. Mayor, please?
Councillor Sandford, what is your point of order, please?
My point of order is that Councillor Hogg did make a good point that we should not be making decisions about amending the council constitution under the emergency powers at group leaders meetings. We should be debating them and deciding them at full council. And if that requires us having additional full council meetings, we should be having them.
I'm not sure that relates to a particular standing order, Councillor Sandford, but had we known that there was going to be any dissent from the virtual meetings protocol, it would have been item number 1 on the agenda. So we've voted on it now, and as you voted to adopt the protocol, it's now past 9:15. In accordance with what you've just adopted, there will be no further debate. A vote will be taken on the remaining items on the agenda without further discussion. All motions, amendments and recommendations will be deemed formally moved and seconded, but I'm going to ask the Head of Constitutional Services to read out the recommendations, and then we will go straight to the vote on each item. The only motions that may be moved are for a matter to be withdrawn or for a matter to be delegated or referred to a relevant body or individual for decision or report.
Thanks, Fiona. Okay, so we're now moving to the vote on motion amended by Councillor Allen as moved by Councillor Alley. I believe that you were all in agreement on this. Is that still the case?
Agreed. We're all agreed.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all agreed. Thank you. Next one. We're now moving to vote on whether to agree the motion as moved by Councillor Sandford as set out in the motions report. I believe this was also agreed. Is that still the case?
That is agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed, yes, thank you.
Agreed, yeah.
That's agreed, thank you. Okay, we are now moving to vote on whether to agree the motion as moved by Councillor Sandford, motion 9, as set out in the motions report.
Rachel, I think Councillor Sandford, oh yes, no, sorry, interrupt, keep going.
Sorry, can I go? Yeah?
Yes, please, sorry.
Okay, so we're now moving to vote on whether to agree the motion as moved by Councillor Sandford as set out in the motions. This is 12.9. we are voting. Is that agreed, or are we? No, we're taking a vote on that one. Thank you.
I don't know what to do there. What's on here? What are we doing?
If it helps Councillor Brown, some of us voted for and some of us voted against, I imagine, Richard.
Okay, they're still going through at the moment.
Just waiting for 2 councillors, Rachel.
Thank you. Councillor Bashir, are you okay this time?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it, Pippa. Okay, the results are 39 for, 13 against, and 5 abstentions. Therefore, this motion is agreed. Okay. We're moving to the next one. We are voting on whether to agree the motion moved by Councillor Day. This is 1210. I believe there was agreement on this. Is that still the case?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thank
Agreed.
you. That's agreed. Thank you. Next
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you. We're now moving to vote on whether to agree the motion of Councillor Hogg as set out in the motions. This is 1211. I believe there was agreement on this one. Is that still the case?
Agreed. You win some, Christian.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's agreed. Okay, now we're going to a vote. We are now voting on whether to agree the motion as moved by Councillor Wiggin as set out in the motions report. This is motion 12. Sorry?
A point of order. I wish to not move this motion now. Can you clarify the
Councillor
procedure?
Wiggin, you just need to not move the motion. That's fine. We'll take it as not moved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next one is Councillor Wiggins again. We're now moving to vote whether to agree the motion amended by Councillor Allen as set out in the additional information pack. I believe this was agreed. Is that still the case?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
All agreed. Lovely. Thank
Agreed,
you.
yeah.
That's agreed. I believe we're on now 13A, item 13A. We are now voting on whether to agree the recommendations moved by Councillor Holditch and Councillor Shaznawaz as set out in the additional information pack. We will vote in turn until a recommendation is agreed. So firstly, Councillor Holditch's proposal is for Labour to have a seat on corporate parenting. This is what we're voting on first. A seat on corporate parenting. Thank you, Pippa.
We are agreeing, that group.
Really an issue. Are they excited at that?
You can have that, Councillor Seaton.
You need to become a better parent, Shaz.
Okay.
I'm learning, Ray, I'm learning.
Okay, there's still a few of you to vote on this one. We there, Pippa? Pippa?
Yep, still waiting for 2 councillors.
Oh, okay. There's still 2 councillors left.
Just 1 left now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the vote's in. The results are 38 in favour of Councillor Holditch's proposal, 17 against, 2 abstentions. Therefore, this is agreed. We will not move to Councillor Shaznawaz's proposal. Thank you. The last one of the evening, I believe, is the calendar of meetings. We are now voting on whether to agree the recommendation set out in page 147 in relation to the calendar of meetings. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Does everybody
Agreed.
agree?
Yeah.
No, Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, move to the vote then, please.
Okay, we're now moving to vote on whether to agree the recommendation set out in page 147 in relation to calendar of meetings. Should be on your screen now. Okay, thank you. The results are 49 in favour, 7 against, there's 1 abstention, therefore that is agreed. That is the end of the votes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, all the members attending meeting tonight, and that is the end of the tonight meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.